Sam Seder here. This is the live broadcast of the Majority Report. And as you probably have heard, there's a bit of a YouTube apocalypse that has been going on. Many news and politics channels have lost their advertising because of an algorithm that Google has implemented as a function of ads showing up on hate-filled channels. Well, we got caught up in that, and it doesn't look like it's going to be resolved. So we need your help. You've probably heard from other channels that they're asking people to donate to a Patreon site. We are asking the same so that we can operate this YouTube feed without a cost to us. I mean, we don't look at YouTube as a huge revenue maker for us, but we need your help so that we're not losing money on it. So head over to our Patreon site. Here is the URL. We need your help. Just a couple of bucks, $2-3 a month would really help us out. Thanks so much and enjoy the show.
Off work in the morning and up at the crack of dawn. All my money worries, wherever I go, come along. Worries a bully that just won't let me be, trying to keep me busy, tussling and struggling. No home since the fire, me and the ash can't settle down. Unsure of where I'm bound, so I sink another round. Placebo for pain, and there's no one for to blame. I refuse to accept that my work is all in vain. Worry's a bully that just won't let me be, trying to keep me busy, tussling and struggling.
Majority Report with Sam Seder. It's time to look in the mirror, America. Do you like what you see?
I keep referring to Obama as the magic Negro.
Do you like what you see now?
Well, suck on this.
It's just a mirror, America.
Shared sacrifice by everybody.
What could it do to you except reflect your image?
I did nothing wrong at the Minneapolis airport.
The Majority Report.
Far more credible to me than PBS and Frontline.
The Majority Report with Sam Seder.
Ever get the feeling you've been cheated?
It is Tuesday, June 27th, 2017. My name is Sam Seder. This is the four-time award-winning Majority Report. We are broadcasting live steps from the industrially ravaged Gowanus Canal in the heartland of America, downtown Brooklyn, USA. On the program today, Professor of History and Public Policy at Duke University, Nancy MaClean, and her book, Democracy in Chains, The Deep History of the radical right's stealth plan for America. Also on the program today, CBO numbers are out. 1 million less will be getting or losing health insurance under the Senate plan. That's only 22 million people. As Republicans scurry to figure out who's going to get paid off to vote for this piece of garbage. Also on the program today, slope meets slippery. SCOTUS says taxpayers can fund religion in certain circumstances. Also, Supreme Court allows a limited version of Trump's travel ban to move forward. Kochs are on a spending spree, really a shopping spree in many respects. They know that the supermarket's going to close possibly in 18 months. Also, very apropos that we're talking to Nancy MaClean today. That deep history includes quite a thread. Charles Koch. Meanwhile, the Senate health care bill, is it in peril or is it not in peril? We'll see. And speaking of slippery slopes, carbon in the atmosphere may have hit a critical mass. Our natural sponges seem to be saturated. U.S. has cut in half the number of refugees it has allowed in under Trump. And Jay Sekulow's highly profitable Christian nonprofit.
Good attorney.
Lastly, the polls show the world now hates us. And, of course, White House threatens Syria over a supposed planned chemical attack. All that and more on today's program, ladies and gentlemen. Let me start by first just offering I don't want to say apology, but, I'm sorry I wasn't here the past couple of days. I had a sort of a family health situation. None of the kids, not my wife, but HIPAA rules prevent me from being more explicit. Everybody's out of any type of immediate danger. I had a couple of fun-filled days sitting in a hospital and learning all sorts of stuff. So that was fun. And, thankfully, everybody has health insurance. And so that's not so much an issue. But, thank you for your understanding, your patience, your indulgence, all that and more. One of the things that I did not get to do over the past couple of days, because I was spending a little bit more time in, like I say, in a hospital than not for me, but than I wanted to, was I had planned last week to finally try out yoga. As you know, Michael has been exerting pressure by always coming in here wearing his yoga pants and
yes, there you go.
So,
my prana bodysuit.
Always coming in with his yoga mat and whatever, his chai tea. And so
chai means tea, but whatever.
Whatever. Yeah. The point being that I was going to try yoga, and the way I was going to do it was that's the thing. It's like I want to try yoga. I don't want to go into, because I don't know the different types of yoga. I don't want to go into a place. I just don't feel comfortable with it. Beachbody On Demand is an online fitness streaming service that gives you unlimited access to a wide variety of highly effective world-class workouts, personalized to meet your needs. It gives you the ability to stream over 600 different workouts. It's true. There's a ton of them there. Amazing results, including Plyo, P90X, 21-day fix, and more. Now, those are the ones that you want to really become a hard body. For me, I just want to become slightly less of a soft body. And so I was going to go for that, I think it's like the 21-day beginner yoga thing where you could do it in your house and you don't have to feel like weirded out. You also get extensive nutritional content, proven to help people achieve their health and fitness goals, including a brand new first-of-its-kind cooking show for healthy weight loss and portion controlled called Fixate, which features over 100 recipe videos. Step-by-step program guides, workout calendars, comprehensive nutrition plans. Fixate and the motivation and support of a growing community, Beachbody On Demand, is the total package. So I will give you an update on my yoga thing because I'm going to start that this week.
I look forward to hearing this.
This is a brand new service, already has over 1 million members. And now you can get a free trial membership when you text the word majority to this number, 303030. So that's 303030. You can get full access to this entire platform for free. Just text majority to 303030.
I'm definitely going to try it out. I don't want to go to the gym either.
I can say I've had personal experience with P90X and the yoga day. That is very difficult.
Well, I'll tell you something. Scott, who's the producer of Ring of Fire, he did that P90X for a while. And he was rock solid. And I was like...
I admire you so much, Scott.
That's not for me, but I understand it for some people. I'm doing the yoga
training.
I don't want to get that. I don't want to scare my
missions.
kids. I don't want to scare my kids, but yoga, that's the one I'm going to do. Yes. All right, let's just listen to Ron Johnson went on with Chuck Todd on Meet the Press. Look, the CBO came out, and there's a couple of competing beliefs out there right now. One is that this is all some type of grand scheme by Mitch McConnell. He knew he would not be able to pass this out of the Senate. He doesn't even want to go to conference because that would be too long. He wants to get directly to tax reform and is getting pressure from different areas to do so. And so he wanted a quick no rather than a long, drawn-out one. And so you're seeing people from, theoretically, from the so-called moderates in the Republican Party to the so-called conservative ideologues. Now, I think they're all full of it, frankly. And the question is that the case, or are we seeing Mitch McConnell, who's the CBO numbers, the only thing that came in good for him was it was $350 billion of deficit reduction. Now, why is that good for him? Because it means he has $200 billion to play with. Remember how it went in the House, right? It was dead. And then it was the guy from New Jersey, McCarthy, who came up with an $8 billion of opioid treatment, I think it was, or more subsidies. So you now have $200 billion to deal with all the different complaints you see across the board. So as much as Susan Collins is coming out there and saying, in her tweets, oh my gosh, I'm so worried about rural hospitals in Maine, hint, hint. And you've got Rob Portman coming out going, but opioid treatment, hint, hint.
Well, is his kid addicted to opioids? That might be real
probably.
If that was true.
Well, but the idea being like, you got this pool of money, man. Spend it. Here's Ron Johnson, who is really concerned about the process. But maybe someday the process will be better. Here he is explaining why covering pre-existing conditions is so problematic.
We know why these premiums have increased. I am reminded I remember President Bill Clinton talking about Obamacare as a crazy system. And he started talking about the people that are busting it, sometimes working 60 hours a week, and then they're left with premiums that have doubled and their coverage cut in half. Those are the forgotten men and women in this entire health care debate, but we know why those premiums doubled. We've done something with our health care system that you would never even think about doing, for example, with auto insurance, where you'd require auto insurance companies to sell a policy to somebody after they crash their car. States that have enacted guaranteed issue, which is the guarantee for pre-existing conditions, it crashes their market.
Yeah, okay, so what he's saying here, and he's saying it in a rather polite way, is that, look, when you have to have insurance that actually covers people who have a higher likelihood of getting sick, in the future, insurance doesn't work in the private market because they can't make the profits they want. So what we're going to do is we're going to try and jettison that or make it really difficult for those people to come in. And then we'll be able to bring down premiums because we'll be offering insurance to the people who need it least. 20% of the population bears 80% of healthcare costs. 5% bear 50%. The problem is you don't know where you fit in this. And one of the ways the insurers keep out the sick people or the could-be sick in the future people is they eliminate certain parts of our society that statistically have a greater propensity to get sick. And that is people who've been sick before. And so you eliminate guaranteed issue. Yeah, you can bring down premiums because you're not having to pay out. Excuse me, I must have Parkinson. According to some folks.
That's such a good stretch.
But the other way you can bring down premiums is to also get rid of essential benefits. And the other way you can bring down premiums is to provide lifetime and yearly caps. In fact, if you provide nothing with your health insurance, you could bring premiums really low because your payouts are going to be virtually nothing. So there is Ron Johnson comparing health insurance and really actually making an argument as to why there shouldn't be a private insurance market because they can't cover it. It's one thing to say, hey, we're going to charge you a lot if you're a bad driver because your life doesn't depend on that coverage. And your livelihood might, but you're not going to go bankrupt. 50% of bankruptcies are not going to be a function of having to pay for more expensive car insurance. It's a fundamentally different thing. And he's making a very strong argument as to why the private insurance industry is really not a real business model that works. All right, we're going to take a quick break. When we come back, we're going to talk to Nancy MaClean, professor from Duke University, on her book, Democracy in Chains, Deep History of the Radical Right's Stealth Plan for America. We'll be right back after this. We are back. Sam Seder on the Majority Report on the phone. It's a pleasure to welcome to the program Nancy MaClean. She is a professor of history and public policy at Duke University, author of Democracy in Chains, Deep History of the Radical Right's Stealth Plan for America. Welcome to the program, Nancy.
I'm happy to be with you, Sam.
So let's obviously start as you did the through line, I guess, and your protagonist of sorts, James McGill Buchanan. I have to admit that I had never heard of this guy before, and he's one of those guys. When you look at the Mont Pelerin Wikipedia, he's in there, but he's not clickable. And it seems like it's a big mistake.
Yes, that's a big mistake. But I have to tell you, I am right there with you. I had never heard of him when I started this research 10 years ago, but I kept happening on him in footnote trails and in the archives as somebody who was really important and who was thinking about issues that I now think about as the issues of the 21st century, as opposed to the Chicago School of Economics, which were the late 20th century. They were talking about freeing markets. He was talking about how to control government and also how essentially to undermine the notion of the common good, of the public interest, and working to lead people to think of ourselves as isolated individuals who are out for our own interests, which leads to a pretty poisonous cynicism about government, and we're seeing the fruits of that now in Washington.
And I mean, and
the state capitals, I should add.
And I would say, just we will circle back to this, but just this weekend we saw the Koch brothers basically gearing up for what feels like, in many respects, the culmination of everything that Charles Koch and Buchanan had been, I guess, dreaming of in many respects, and and more importantly, planning for. But before we get there, let's go back and follow James McGill Buchanan's pedigree, because you trace some of these the intellectual history, the lineage here, as far back as Vice President John Calhoun. Just follow that for us. Follow that forward. What part of Calhoun's theories carry forward?
Yeah, John C. Calhoun, for readers who haven't had a history class lately, I'll just say was a U.S. Senator from South Carolina in the early 19th century, and he went into political action, ironically, over taxes. He didn't like the idea of taxing protective tariffs to protect northern infant industries so that they could compete with European industries. He thought that hurt southern cotton planters, and he developed a very arch property rights case for essentially restricting national democracy. And he denied that there was such an entity as we the people, and instead insisted that the United States was but a compact of states, and that states were free to defy the federal government through something called interposition. And what was really interesting to me was to see Calhoun being connected to Buchanan, this guy with a PhD from the University of Chicago, in two different ways. In one way, I realized that when Buchanan came to Virginia in 1956, it was just as a right-wing journalist, James Jackson Kilpatrick, was reviving Calhoun's ideas about states' rights to fight Brown versus Board of Education and goading the wider South to massive resistance using Calhoun's ideas. And that was one point. And then later, some of Buchanan's own colleagues, former colleagues at George Mason, have said, Tyler Cohen, who has a very popular economics blog, and a guy named Alexander Tabarrok, they both wrote this piece about Buchanan and Calhoun, saying Buchanan, commenting on the kinship of their ideas, and saying that both Buchanan's ideas of public choice and Calhoun's infant political science, as Calhoun called it, political science, that they had the same purpose and the same end of protecting this system of property rights, essentially protecting the minority from domination by the majority. And I just thought this was fascinating to see his own colleagues acknowledge the connection, because Calhoun was someone who thought that slavery was not exploitative, but that taxing slaveholders for public goods like public education or roads or things that the yeomanry in the backcountry wanted to do, that was exploitation, and the property men should beware of those smallholders.
And I have to say that the thing that throughout this, I guess, this intellectual lineage, there is a fascinating interplay between sort of, and I think at one point you write white supremacy ensuring capital supremacy. And that I mean, that subjugation of the other, I guess, element is this idea of, like, I have this ideology about that is a belief system, and my experience with libertarians, and I've had the opportunity to debate many of them, is consistent with Buchanan's refusal and eschewing of any empirical data. And it's this notion of like, I have this ideology, and it just so happens that it completely leaves me in the catbird seat. In terms of like, if we were to impose it, that's a coincidence, but it is an ideology. And that's what Calhoun was doing when he was talking about, it's the United States is a confederation. Just so happens it leaves his power base and his source of revenue intact.
Yes, and Buchanan would always, and his students said this, and his colleagues, he would always insist to them, we start from here, meaning by that we cannot question how the existing allotment of wealth was gained, what injustices, what other things might have gone into it, but also it had a kind of a second meaning, which is that get rid of these libertarian, pie-in-the-sky ideas. Let's develop practical plans for how we're going to achieve these goals, and that's what he really brought to Koch, that Koch found so helpful, was this understanding of the political economy that could be harnessed to do the kind of, big bang, shock and awe style push for radical change that we're seeing unfold right now on healthcare. I mean, it is astonishing that one of our major political parties is trying to push through hugely consequential legislation without any due deliberation, right? And also doing it in defiance of that party's own voters' desires. So one of the things, you made reference to the Koch meeting recently where they're saying that they don't like Trump's healthcare plan because it gives too much to people who are less wealthy. And one of the things that's so interesting to me about that is, if you've studied Buchanan's ideas and you understand how the system works, basically what they're saying to these Republican senators who are buckling because their own voters don't like this Trump care. I mean, nobody does, though. I think it's 14% approval was the last thing I saw. But because these Republican senators are bending to their own constituents, the Koch donor network is saying, we're going to come after you. We are raising hundreds of millions of dollars, and we will drive you from office if you are not loyal to our program. So that is, this is just the clearest example, I think, of how Buchanan's ideas are being used by the Koch network to change the incentives of our political system and to change the rules in order to achieve radical and, they hope, irrevocable permanent change.
Well, all right, let's go. I don't want to get too far ahead of ourselves. Let's go back to.
Sorry.
Well, because
I am a historian.
No, exactly, and I think that is where we come. But before we get there, let's talk a little bit about what public choice economics is. This is where Buchanan sort of, I guess, started and realized, like, hey, I'm going to get fundamentally more anti-democratic in some respects, it seems to me. But start with that. Explain that to us.
Okay, so public choice economics is actually a broader current of political economy, and there are some liberals who see value in public choice ideas. For example, Cass Sunstein, Obama's, he was called the regulatory czar, wrote a book called Nudge, about how you could use knowledge of incentives to shape good public policy. So I do want to make clear that it's not just a project of the right, but Buchanan's particular stream of that larger current of public choice thought was what he and his followers began to call the Virginia School of Political Economy. And in his hands, it was very much a set of ideas to basically bring this Calhoun-like notion that the population divides into makers, the people who are now called job creators too, right? Makers and takers, and that you have to beware of the takers and that they are going to exploit the makers through their political power and the ability of government to transfer resource, to transfer tax revenues from one group to another. So Buchanan thought long and hard about those issues and ended up arguing for what he called a constitutional revolution. He said that no government in the world, no constitution in the world was adequately protective of the rights of the minority. And by the minority, he did not mean, racial minorities. He had never shown concern about them. He meant economic minorities, the wealthy minority. No constitution was adequately protective of their liberty and their minority rights, and so he made his life's mission from the mid-1970s on what he called constitutional economics, figuring out how you could change the rules of governance and ultimately the constitutional rules in order to essentially undercut the model of government that we knew over the course of the 20th century. You know, a government that does things like protects workers' rights, that intervenes to regulate the environment, that engage, you know, that has anti-discrimination enforcement, all those kinds of things that, you know, social insurance for older retired people so that they don't go poor in their old age if they don't have savings accounts. All of those kinds of things that most of us think of as a good society, right, and a really, really good use of our government were things that really irritated Buchanan and these other libertarians. And you see that again in what's playing out in this healthcare legislation. One of the Koch people said that the Senate's plan was a slight nip and tuck of Obama's health care law, and he described what they were doing as immoral. That's what they mean by immoral. That seems, you know, inscrutable to most of us, you know, when we're talking about people's lives who might be saved by having access to health care. But for these arch libertarians, it's immoral for the government to tax me as a person of wealth in order to make sure that you, as a person who did not save, does not die.
Well, what's fascinating about this, too, is it seems to me like the advent of constitutions, I mean, is fundamentally at odds with his project. At least it was until he figured out some way of manipulating it, right? I mean, the reason why we have constitutions is because we no longer have sort of feudal systems that are dominated by those people who have a corner on whatever the currency is in that era. Maybe it was, you know, steel swords and, you know, chariots, right, and the gold to pay for it or whatever it was. But, I mean, that's the dilemma, is that once you have a constitution, once you have a democracy, you are fundamentally running contrary to this guy, and I should say, it seems to me, Charles Koch, and I would say also the Mont Pelerin Society. Yeah. I mean, just remind people about that, because it seems to me this is where Buchanan, once he gets sort of read into those group of folks, where he becomes more fundamentally anti-democratic.
Yes, absolutely. All the things you raise are spot on. As far as the Mont Pelerin Society, yes, it was founded in 1947, just as Buchanan was in graduate school, and his mentor was the only American who was among the triumvirate of founders. So it was also Friedrich Hayek and Ludwig von Mises, and this guy named Frank Knight, who was then the most famous member of the Chicago School. Milton Friedman was just, you know, was a young new faculty member who was there as an add-on, but not particularly significant at that point. But anyway, this Mont Pelerin Society is an invitation-only international society, mostly European and American in the beginning, but now worldwide. And it included thinkers like Buchanan, you know, Hayek, Friedman, et cetera, and businessmen, very arch-libertarian businessmen. Charles Koch joined in 1970, for example, and these right-wing foundations that subsidized the whole effort. And so originally it started as a kind of a talk shop, you know, for people who wanted what they called the free society, but which many of us would call free market fundamentalism. But by the end, you know, in the recent years, you know, by the late 1990s, it really had become, it seems, kind of taken over by Charles Koch and like-thinking billionaires. Even some people who had been part of the early effort were complaining about that and retreating from it. And Buchanan and Koch and these others actually discuss some of the things that they're going to be doing at George Mason to advance this audacious project to change our society and government. They discuss that at the Mont Pelerin Society. Of according to documents I found in Buchanan's papers. So, and also by the late 1970s, the Mont Pelerin people realized that they would be a permanent minority. And again, I have documents that show that. And therefore, they start talking about, well, how do we get, we may have to get non-democratic governments in order to achieve what it is that we want. And they're very explicit about that. And actually, Buchanan helps get such a constitution in Chile, and I have a chapter on that. But in terms of your point about the constitutions, another thing I think is really interesting here is that, this whole apparatus, and by now the Koch money and the influence is it's not just in his personal project, the Cato Institute, from the 1970s. It's the Heritage Foundation. It's, it's just like, I could name 15 right off the tip of my tongue, but I won't take up the time. But it's throughout this apparatus. And what's really interesting is they present themselves as Madisonians, right? They say, oh, we're the people who are supporting the founders' vision, and, we just want to prevent these people who have hijacked our government and, destroyed our liberty and blah, blah, blah. But the thing is, the vision of government they're advocating is Calhounian, and Madison himself said it would be the end of free government everywhere. If this, I forget the exact quote, but it's in the book. Madison said that, this would be the end of the American experiment of we the people if ideas like Calhoun's were allowed to prevail, that it was based on such a radical misinterpretation and rerouting of the constitutional project in America. And I think that's interesting, too, because, a lot of your readers will know, the U.S. Constitution is a pretty conservative document, right? And Madison was very concerned with protecting property rights. So our Constitution, as it is, protects property rights to a degree that no other constitution in the world does. It has 4 veto points, which is unparalleled for modern constitutional democracies. And yet these guys are saying it doesn't have enough protections of their interest, as the rest of us are saying, what are we going to do about the skyrocketing inequality in our society and the unresponsiveness of our system given current interpretations of the Constitution?
A while back, we spoke to Philip Murawski, who had written a
He's
book.
Brilliant, yeah.
And I encourage people to go back and listen to that interview if they can. His book, I think, was Never Let a Good Crisis Go to Waste, or something to that effect. And one of the things, the points that he made about Mount Pelerin is that, and this is arguably why von Mises left this society, was that in the end, their libertarian philosophy sort of ended when it came to providing for themselves. That they saw, we need to control society's levers to make sure that the value of society comes back to us. So it's not, and I think you write quite convincingly that people need to understand that this is an ideology for the Koch brothers. It's not just because they're going to get tax cuts, but it is fundamentally, and von Mises left because he claimed they were socialists, because they were using government to essentially enrich themselves, not just, in the petty, like I'm going to get taxes back, but constructing society in such a way that folks like them, and, we can take a look at them and get a sense of what them are and what their net worth, they will retain their power. And
I'm not sure on the particulars of what you're saying about why von Mises left. Von Mises actually complained at the beginning that everybody wasn't right-wing enough for him.
That's what I'm saying.
But at the beginning of the Mont Pelerin Society, Hayek in particular made a case that, okay, of course we need to have some element of a welfare state. There's certain things that we have to do for popular well-being, but the question is where you draw the line. And John Maynard Keynes, who was friends with Hayek, said the same thing. He's like, well, that's the rub, and you're not saying where you draw the line. So Hayek was kind of cagey, but that's what was too much for von Mises, that they would actually do anything for the population. So there's been different points on the ideological spectrum, and Buchanan himself, in fact, especially earlier in his life, thought, okay, well, what was his phrase? They always use the phrase slavery, which was interesting because they had in some ways this neo-Confederate understanding of the Constitution. But Buchanan said something like, 30% slavery is better than 90% slavery. So Buchanan's thing was if you could get people to agree, and his ideal was consensus, which means essentially, anybody can block it, right? Particularly these very rich people. But if you can get consensus, unanimity was this word. If you can get unanimity on government provisions based on principled argument, then you can have them. But otherwise, if you use group power to obtain those changes or anything else, you can't. They're not legitimate. But
those are. I guess my point was, and I think I'm not misstating Murawski, is that those reasoned arguments, right, that have nothing to do with essentially political movement or democracy, start where they are. Those arguments are put in place as like as you said earlier. Today is day one, and anything that is and so it's we're going to basically encase these rules in this moment, in this snapshot in time, which have brought us to have empowered us, and lock those. And
actually,
in.
We're going to make them stricter. For example, using state government power to preempt local ability to raise wages, enforce anti-discrimination, protect the environment. That's something they're pushing very hard through ALEC and other groups.
Or if we are in an industry, we're going to then provide regulation that it makes the bar to entry for anybody to compete against us too high. I have to differ with you a little bit, because I think at least Charles Koch from the 1970s, from what I know and what I've seen in the sources, has actually been principled on this, and they do criticize corporate, what they call rent seeking, as well as what they call old people say rent-seeking, or public sector workers. So Koch said, very clearly in the 1970s, and has continued to say it, that it is immoral for corporations to seek benefits from government themselves when they would deny that to ordinary workers. So I think the challenge for those of us who are critical of these ideas is really to, in a sense, meet them on the level of ideas. That clearly there are people who are supporting this, like all the hedge fund billionaires who love these ideas, and like Peter Thiel, think that people shouldn't vote and and just will boldly say capitalism is much more important than democracy. There are people like that will see their own self-interest advanced by these ideas and probably support it on that basis. But still, I think there are a lot of ordinary people who find some value in some element of these ideas, right? That they, they're sort of seduced by the notion of liberty. They've had some bad experience with government regulation, some bad experience with the union. I think that we have to take those ideas seriously, and debate them on their merits, even as, there are many in this cause who are clearly seeking their own self-interest. But I think there are others who are deeply ideological, and I think Charles Koch is one of them. He's a messianic figure. I mean, he has actually compared himself to Martin Luther. And he said when he started this project at George Mason, he said, I want to unleash the kind of force that propelled Columbus. Right. So this is a world-changing vision, and I think we need to understand it as such. And I guess my point, though, is that just even in the definition of liberty, it is limited to the impinging of government upon the liberty of the individual, as opposed to corporations.
You're absolutely right, and I think that's a crucial,
highly convenient if you are a major corporation.
Yes, and I think also, though, I think it's important for people who are critical of all of this project as it's unfolding and what Trump is, the Trump administration is doing for this project. I think it's really important for us to engage these ideas about freedom and liberty on our own side, because look, the civil rights movement and SNCC, their call was freedom now, right? These guys are talking about liberty, and the civil rights movement, is a black freedom movement. So the distinction I think we need to make, and that we need to be talking to ordinary people about, is that the lesson of the late 19th century and of the whole 20th century is that in the modern world, corporate power had become so huge and so influential that the only way that ordinary people could exercise any freedom, any autonomy, have their dignity respected, be able to get their needs met, was to build up countervailing power, as John Galbraith put it, to corporate power. And it's exactly that countervailing power that this cause is going after. So I actually believe that they are deeply committed to their notion of liberty. But I think what we have to help people understand is that, as you're saying, their definition of liberty is so restrictive, and it's a kind of liberty that would actually deprive the great majority of what we understand as freedom in our lives.
Explain to us what the Big Bang Theory is. This is not the the one that brought
the physics.
Yes,
yeah.
the one that brought us from the primordial ooze.
Right. Yeah, so this is very interesting. After Charles Koch decides, he's by his own recounting, he said, I spent decades investing in hundreds of intellectuals looking for the right technology, and he is an MIT-trained engineer. He's got 3 engineering degrees from MIT, so he thinks of ideas as technology, right? Things that enable big breakthroughs. So he said he spent decades looking for those, funding hundreds of intellectuals, and he felt that he had found them by 1997 when he invested his first $10 million in George Mason. And
George Mason University.
Yes. They basically have carved off a corner of this public university and made it a kind of base camp for this project to transform our country. Where was I going there? Oh, so this happens in 1997. Just after that, another Koch institution at George Mason called the Institute for Humane Studies commissioned Tyler Cohen, who probably is known to your readers from his many of your listeners from his popular economics blog. The Institute for Humane Studies commissions Tyler Cohen to do a review of the literature, sort of, to look at, as they put it, where liberty has advanced, right, and to draw lessons for their social change project based on that review. And in this review, Cohen points to places like Chile, Peru under Fujimori, I'm forgetting some, New Zealand. He looks at various places where there are these big surges for advances for their cause of economic liberty. And he suggests from them that and he actually explicitly acknowledges that in no case was there popular demand for this program. People did not want it. So the question was how to impose it. And Cohen says it seemed that clustered big bangs were the best way to get it, right, to get what they wanted. And there's more to the article, and it's actually up online, and I talk about it in the book. But so Cohen says, that we need these clustered big bangs, and it's really interesting that after this operation goes full tilt, after the 2010 midterm elections, the state arms of this start talking about their big bang. So my own state of North Carolina, Civitas, which was created and funded by a man named Art Pope, who has worked with the Kochs for decades now. Civitas actually had a 4-inch headline that said "Big Bang!" ! Of what they had gotten done in the legislature. So it's not the most obscure phrase. Possibly it didn't come from Tyler Cohen, but I think that these ideas have really been pumped out and through the network, and they understand that they have to act rapidly on many fronts. It's like the shock and awe doctrine of warfare, right? Act on so many fronts with such force that you paralyze the enemy and demoralize the enemy, and you push through this stuff. And again, sorry to keep coming back to the current issue, but we see this in healthcare, right? Why is Mitch McConnell, working at such a breakneck pace so irresponsibly for Senate leader in American history that I know of has acted so recklessly and tried to push through something so quickly that is so flawed, and challenged from so many quarters. But they know that, it's facts on the ground that matter to them, right? If they can smash this thing up as quickly as possible, then they can move on to the next thing.
It is almost a man-made version of the sort of the disaster capitalism theory that I guess I would
Naomi Klein.
Well, Naomi Klein, but Buchanan and Friedman practiced in Chile. In many respects, they come in when society is sort of sort of stunned and in a state of shock, and move in quickly and make all sorts of radical changes. This is almost as if you were to sort of overwhelm the body politic in the same fashion, but do this by simply generating so much activity.
Yes, and Buchanan's role, Friedman's role in Chile has been well recognized, and almost everything that happens there is attributed to the Chicago boys. But Latin Americanists who really know this history, some of them have pointed out that the Virginia school was more important. Actually, not many, a few, but it got my attention, and I looked into it. And so I have a whole chapter on the Chilean story because, just as you say, I think it's sort of the past is prologue for us. That what they did in Chile is what they're seeking to do in the United States, and in particular, what Buchanan's contribution was to the Pinochet government was helping them to craft a constitution that would make it almost impossible, even for supermajorities of the Chilean people, to achieve fundamental change in their society. And so Chile has reformed a lot of elements of what they inherited from the Pinochet government, including the god-awful Social Security system that it adopted that was terrible for older people, and they're now trying to change. But what Buchanan did was push this really detailed constitution that Michelle Bachelet, a later president, has complained of. As she said, we need a constitution without locks and bolts. And Buchanan was the one who showed how to craft those locks and bolts, essentially manacles on popular power. And this is what this network is trying to do. I believe this is the end game of the Koch network that many journalists have missed. They want to change the U.S. Constitution. And they, in fact, are pushing toward a constitutional convention. They have 28 states signed up. They push very hard to control the states when most left and liberal eyes are focused on Washington. So they have 28 states. They need 6 more states, only 6 more, to convene a constitutional convention. And every time they pass a right to work law or a voter suppression, all of those things are driving people away from the political process so that they can get those extra 6 states and get this constitutional convention. And when they get that constitutional convention, the very first order of business will be a balanced budget amendment, which would essentially mean the destruction of Social Security and Medicare by other means. And they're very serious about this, and this is something I think journalists need to pay a lot more attention to, this the constitutional and legal push from this crew, and also what they're doing at the state level to make these radical changes that will enable ultimately a national transformation. And I should say, too, just in case people think, well, that's fine, but I need to pick up, do my laundry and pick up my kids, and I can't pay attention to politics. Koch, one of his top lieutenants, said in 2014, we're very close to winning. He said, we're very close to winning, and he said the other side doesn't have the real plan. So I think people who really need to pay attention, if they care about American democracy, if they understand that democracy is not a thing, it's that is there for all time. It's something that must be fought for again and again. It happened in the Civil War, it happened in the 1930s, it happened in the 1960s. This is another one of those moments where if we want a society that speaks to values like fairness and due process and, sustainability and all of those things, then we need to pay attention and engage so that this project is not able to succeed.
Let me just ask you, just is a little tangential, but on that notion of a constitutional convention. I mean, I've heard different theories about this, about how wide open an Article 5 Constitution would be, and that there are 2 different sort of methodologies to holding these constitutional conventions. I mean, is there, and in fact, there are those on the left who are trying to convene a form of a constitutional convention, I guess, by going to states and having specific states offer a constitutional convention specifically for the purpose of essentially reversing Citizens United and its the pedigree of cases that led up to that. I mean, is that possible? I mean, what do you know from a historical...
I think if there is a constitutional convention, I think that is I understand the frustration with Citizens United, and I understand why people on the left might want to do something like that. I think that would be the most strategically foolish thing anyone on the left or liberal could do at this moment in history. Because the thing is, the left is totally disorganized. You know, our labor unions are reeling. There is no real left. You know, it's a motley collection of people with good intentions who have lots of talents, but who have no, you know, commonly agreed upon strategy or view or organization. Any such constitutional convention will be utterly and totally dominated by this group, which is very well organized and has been very well organized for years. So I actually think in some ways, too, you know, this talk about impeaching Trump, I wonder how, you know, the Koch operations, I sort of imagine them like, you know, kind of rubbing their hands together and saying, yeah, impeach him, and then say we have to have a constitutional convention to prevent somebody like him from getting into power because we will take over that convention. You know, I don't think people understand at all how well organized, how deeply rooted, and how broad and systematic these operations are that Koch, the Koch donor network is funding. I'm actually working on some digital graphics to go with book talks to help people see that, because, you know, it's just the detail can be mind-numbing. But, I mean, there are literally hundreds of organizations that are ostensibly separate that are working together to make this happen, and they collectively involve, you know, just mind-numbing amounts of money. So I think that the best thing the left can do, and I don't want to just say the left, because frankly, I think moderate Republicans, you know, have a stake in this. You know, ordinary Republican voters, their politicians are not representing their desires anymore. Their politicians are afraid of challenges from the Club for Growth and Freedom Partners and all the rest of it, and so they are answering to the donors and not to the voters' concerns and interests. And so the best thing I think that people who are concerned about the future of our democracy can do is to get engaged, to get out and talk to their neighbors, to do basic things like canvassing, you know, not histrionics, not, you know, panicking, you know, wild gestures, none of that. Get out and rebuild democracy and popular power from the bottom up, get people involved in these basic conversations about, you know, what is a democracy, why do we have it, what is fairness, what do we need to do to achieve fairness. All of that, I think, is what we really need to be doing. Now, I will say there are some things, though, on the left that are challenging this enterprise that I think are really smart. Like there's something called the National Popular Vote Project,
yes, the
you know,
NPV.
Which basically approaches states and says, you know, gets them to agree to pledge their electoral college representatives to whatever the popular vote decides.
Yes.
You know, like there are some things like that I think, you know, are good, and they also engage people in talking to their neighbors, you know, and making basic arguments about democracy and helping people understand how our system does not represent one person, one vote in a fair way. You know, if you're from California, your vote is nothing compared to the vote of somebody from Wyoming in the Senate, right? So there's lots of things that we need to alert people to, and there are, you know, particular measures that will be helpful. But I think the worst thing that anybody on the left could do in this particular environment with this long building Koch project is to have any talk about a constitutional convention. You know, if it were me, anytime that subject comes up, I would put the brakes on, because even conservative judges, I believe it was Rehnquist, said that this would be a disaster, that there would be no, you know, there are rules about how to get this constitutional convention there, but we haven't had one since 1787.
Right. Well, that is my concern with the project.
There are no rules, so the strongest and best organized power will win.
That has been my concern with those type of things.
Yeah.
I mean, let me just ask you this last question. Has this plan? I mean, you have Buchanan there, who is sort of drawing up basically a formula to how to approach a whole range of public functions. Has this operational plan that has been, at the very least, largely funded, if not organized, by the Kochs, and particularly Charles Koch, and friends, how much of it is? I mean, how narrow and defined is the plan, or is there a sort of a venture fund quality of this? Like we don't know where the sweet spot is, so we're going to fund 50 of these, and 3 will come out, and you know, we're going to let 1,000.
Yeah.
What
that
is
so. that is so astute, Sam. I think it's kind of both. And I've actually read every bit of Charles Koch's writing that I can get my hands on. And most of his writing is about his business strategy. But I think if you read about his business strategy, you understand also how he's going to work politically, because he sees them as the same kind of enterprise. And so he talks about hiring above all based on values. And when he says that, I think what he's talking, particularly in these political operations, is people who share these libertarian commitments, and then they train them in Buchanan-style ideas about, how government works and what to do about it. But then Charles Koch is very much a kind of venture capitalist. And so his idea is here, exactly what you just said, Institute for Justice. You want to litigate to bring back the pre-New Deal Constitution? Here's a seed fund to get you started. Go do what you can do. So Clint Bullock takes the money and gets some cases to the Supreme Court for school vouchers and other things, and does pretty well. So Koch keeps investing. Now Clint Bullock is on the Arizona Supreme Court, put there by a Tea Party governor. There are some other efforts that haven't worked as well. But also, like, most of us are led to think that all of these things are separate. But Breitbart is connected to the Koch operation. Breitbart will defame people and destroy their reputations based on dishonest editing of videos, as they did to Acorn, as they did to Shirley Sherrod, as they're doing now to other people. But that's part of it too. But then it gives Koch plausible deniability to say, oh, that's not me. That's this other operation. I didn't know they were doing that. But you are absolutely right. And in documents that I have that I cite in the book, Koch says kind of exactly what you're saying, that he is just happy to provide seed money for all these different enterprises, whether it's the State Policy Network or the constitutional litigators or, the grassroots operations they're funding now to try to, reclaim their name in black communities. All of these things, he'll give some money for it, and he likes people to respond to incentives, So if people can show him they're getting results, they'll get more money. And if they don't get results, then they'll get pushed aside or, shunted off to more less shrewd and calculating donors. But it's exactly what you say, that it's kind of a combination of, wanting that ideological commitment and commitment to the program and the plan as kind of a core thing, but then it's like, go invest in something, go do something new. They even have a Motion Pictures Institute now that's producing, trying to produce freedom-minded films and training young interns. And, there's just a ton of money flowing, and anybody who has a good idea for how to advance their cause and shows that they'll be disciplined and toe the line and work with the program, they'll get money from this donor network. They just said at this latest convention they had 400 people attending, and they're supposed to give $100,000 each. So this is the kind of $100,000 per year they have to pledge to get into the Koch donor network. So you can imagine what a cash flow this creates for, as you said, continuing to support, of course, the groups that have proved themselves, like the Cato Institute and Heritage Foundation, and Grover Norquist, but also funding all these little, we could say startup operations on the right.
Well, whatever it takes to make sure that children don't have health care. Sky's the limit.
Touche.
Nancy MaClean.
I shouldn't laugh.
Well,
a viewer, can I just say, somebody on another radio show actually wrote to me and said, that about like my wry laughter at some of these things. But frankly, it's because I don't want to cry.
Yes. No, I think
so appalling.
I think
I am gobsmacked.
You just described basically our elevator pitch for the show. Nancy MaClean, the book is Democracy in Chains, A Deep History of the Radical Right Stealth Plan for America. Thank you so much. We will put a link to your book at majority.fm. Really appreciate it.
Thank you so much, Sam. Enjoy talking with you.
Bye-bye. All right, folks. Going to take a quick break and head into the fun half. Now, look, if you watch the show live, I should tell you, or listen to the show live, there is a decent chance that we're going to be starting 30 minutes late tomorrow. There's a decent chance. 30 minutes late tomorrow.
Why? From yoga recovery?
I really, I'm going to do yoga for 20 hours straight.
My chakras hurt so goddamn much.
Saul is graduating from pre-K.
Oh, please.
Give me a break.
Bunch of bullshit.
Well, here it is. I was supposed to go on a photo shoot of he and his classmates. They have all come up with superhero costumes for themselves. But then I had to, I couldn't go on Thursday morning because I had to go to out of town to go visit a medical situation. And so tomorrow they're all dressing up in their superhero outfits. And he is Laser Boy, which he made up. And he's got a pose and the whole thing. And he actually thinks he's Laser Boy. So.
Sounds super stoked about it.
Yeah. Well, but so we may start 30 minutes late tomorrow. But if we're here at 12, we're here at 12. If we're not, we'll have some type of music or something going on to indicate that we're going to be starting later. Folks, just a reminder, it is your support that makes this show possible. By becoming a member of the Majority Report, you will become a member of the Majority Report. And when that happens, we give you an extra hour plus every day of content as a way of saying thank you. It is pennies a day. It is your support that makes this show possible. We are funded to a certain extent by corporations like today we had an ad for Beachbody on Demand. They have a very strong agenda to make sure that people have bodies that would be appropriate on a beach.
And who funds the guys over at the Majority Report?
Right.
Beachbody. Now, what does
Right.
Beachbody support?
So-
my wife. So why do they like John Ossoff so much? You got to follow the thread here.
Yeah, exactly. And so
Kamala Harris hates you.
It is the fact that we don't. We get a little bit of ads on Google, on YouTube, but the primary driver of our revenue on this show is you, and that keeps us free from all sorts of corporate influence. In fact, we don't care about clicks. I obviously want a big audience, and our podcast has grown significantly, but we don't chase clicks. We don't chase views. When we do stuff that tends to get views on YouTube, it's because we want to have fun. And that's what we do.
Here is a 45-minute review of the Tim Black Sab Cedar debate. I don't know who Sab Cedar is. Kind of looks like Rachel Maddow. Total corporate sellout, though.
but
I don't really know about that subject area.
Clicks. We don't chase clicks with conspiracy theories. We don't chase clicks with any of it.
Oh, so Kim.com's a conspiracy theorist. Okay, sure. Go back on MSNBC.
And that's why we rely on our members so that we can do, sometimes fairly dry stuff. But you can become a member today at jointhemajorityreport.com. Also, justcoffee.coop. It's a co-op, and of course, completely run by the CIA. But it's the way that they get their drugs in to pay for weapons to bomb Yemen.
Who do you think gave my
while
wife
they do
the
that,
information?
while they do that, it's fair trade for all the people involved.
Classic corporate liberal evasion.
So they on one hand stuff all sorts of diamonds and guns in the coffee, but they pay everybody who picks the stuff and ships the stuff a fair wage. That's why it's all fair trade stuff. Justcoffee.coop.
Who gave Sam the coordinates on Seth Rich to do the job for my wife?
And
Beachbody.com. That's who.
If you
all connects.
And if you buy crap from Amazon or jet.com, check out our links over at majorityreportkickback.com. Click on that link. You will notice no difference. We get a kickback. Thus, majorityreportkickback.com. Going to take a quick break. We'll be right back with the fun half, wherein we will be talking about the current state of the Senate healthcare repeal bill. Brian Kilmeade from Fox and Friends will fill you in on the latest talking points.
They say it's a kickback themselves. They say it. It's a kickback. Majority Report does kickbacks. They say it themselves.
Oh, also, I'll talk about, I was last night. I got back from into town, and of course, rather than take a nap, I went to the Downtown Women for Change. I've gone to multiple groups like this in and around New York, and it's actually, and I had mentioned this before, there's a move afoot to really focus, apropos of our conversation with Nancy MaClean, on state legislatures across the country, and to isolate those states where the winning of a race or two could make a difference. And you know they're doing this on the right. And this is an attempt to sort of counter that. And these groups do a bunch of other things. But I had an interesting conversation we'll talk about in the fun half, where I moderated a panel of former DNC staffer.
Of course you did.
Prior to 2015.
All
He left
right.
in 2014. People who have been involved in New York politics, and a guy who, a professor from Virginia, who was who ran for election at one point, but also was involved in the Democratic Party down in Roanoke. So very different, differing perspectives on this. We'll talk about that and more on the fun half. Ladies and gentlemen, 646-257-3920. We'll be back in a moment. Oh, so
Yeah, great move,
Matt
man.
got a little bit rusty.
Professional,
apparently. Here we
professional
go.
quality right there.
Think of all the times she said no, 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 no. Like to speak my mind. She said no, 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 no. And I know her time's not free. She didn't waste none on me. Situation sad. She said no, 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 no. Things are looking bad. She said no, 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 no. And if it was up to me, I'd tell her a thing or three. Every time I see her look my way, I don't know, girl, what to say. Situation sad. She said no, 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 no. Things are looking bad. She said no, 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 no. And if it was up to me, I'd tell her a thing or three. No, 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 no. No, 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 no. No, 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 no.
Sad. We're back. Consummate professionalism. Sam's in the bathroom, and he's coming. He's walking very slowly. It's almost like he's already started doing yoga.
All right, folks. We're back. It's the fun half, ladies and gentlemen. It's the fun half here on the Majority Report. I'm still hearing that little crackly noise. His
Maybe
mic,
it's just-
your microphone. It is your microphone.
We've already gone over this, though.
It is your. It's that button. Don't we have another one? Oh, wait, there it is. It's quieter.
It's one.
Yeah, that's bad.
That is not good.
Oh, that's better.
Okay.
That's
You
bad.
sure the crackling in your ears isn't because of the recoil from all of the gunshots you've been busting off in your Clinton assassin missions?
I guess like it's a whole narrative that he's just
love
built
it.
up. That is like,
Well, I told you I did a poll as to which theory people preferred, that Seth Rich was killed in an Obama knockout game or that you killed him. And I actually thought that the Obama one would be more popular.
personally.
But yeah. Don't you remember we broke that news to Tim Black?
I forgot that. I
And he
think
said,
largely.
and Tim Black was like, "Oh, you Seth Meyers over here."
Still crackling.
I am
Inappropriate
largely-
impression just now. Michael's mic can just go down.
Oh God,
ahead,
Kelly, why are you being so annoying today? Like unusually so.
Take it easy. What immediately goes into the yawn too. I notice. All right, let's
Always
go
the
to calling from a 210 area code. Who's this? Where are you calling from?
Yeah, it's John from San Antonio. How you
Hello,
doing?
John. How are you?
I'm good, despite the horrible bill that was put out, the worst bill in my lifetime that I've ever seen. Definitely domestic. I mean, it's unbelievable. But it only has a 16% approval rating, so I guess we'll go from there.
Yeah, but
All right,
I mean,
excellent
but let me ask you this though. Wait, before you say that, it had 17% in the House, right? And they're more sensitive theoretically, right? Or no?
No, I think the Senate's going to be a little bit, but I mean, I'm not gonna make a prediction on this because I think you're right, and you know, I mean, 2 days before the bill, I was a little bit worried about it, and then when I was like thinking about my call, I was like, why did I say that? And then 2 days later, the bill passes, you know, so it's really hard to, you know, because I think that a lot of the Republican senators are just so corrupted by the Republican Party that they really don't have any true values. And so, I mean, it's really hard to predict what they're going to do. So
Right.
I'm not going to really – but, I mean, you know, I do think things are leaning against it. I mean, I think that you can't really deny that momentum. But will it have an effect that's going to help most people? It's hard to say. Okay. Anyway, good interview with Nancy MaClean. But I think you were right in saying when you're talking about the Koch brothers and how they weren't that principled, you know, that they will contradict themselves if it helps them. And she was kind of pushed back against that. So I'm gonna agree with you on this, and I'm gonna quote Jane Mayer from Dark Money: The Hidden History of Billionaires Behind the Rise and Falls of the Radical Right. It says, many reporters assume Koch opposition to Obama as stemming from their principal disagreement or their over issues such as the TARP bailout, but none of this was true. At first, the Koch's political organizations, Americans for Prosperity, had in fact taken what appeared to be a libertarian position against the bailouts, but the organization quickly and quietly reversed sides when the bottom began to fall out of the stock market, threatening the Koch's vast investment portfolio.
Yeah,
So
I mean,
I agree with you on that.
Of course. And look, but, you know, the beauty of libertarianism is that if they're acting in their own self-interest, it's going to help society, right? I mean, so they can always, the overriding principle is that, well, we have to act in our own self-interest. And that is like the fundamental building block of libertarianism, right? So it covers it all. Even if it means that we have to jettison some of those other principles in the short term, we're still providing a certain level of fealty to our primary directive, which is to take care of ourselves first, and then everybody in society will work out better. But yeah, I take them at their word that they believe in that philosophy. I just think that it's very convenient. It's a very convenient place to be. I mean, you know, I think, you know, when you support a structure and a philosophy that continues to place you on the top of the heap. So,
yeah, no, I agree. So when Rob Quist lost the election in Montana, many centrist commentators saw this as a reaffirmation that our revolutionary candidates, who are backed by Bernie Sanders, can't win. And when Ossoff lost, Bernie Sanders supporters said the same thing, that he didn't run a progressive campaign. But I think what they're both missing is the fact that all of these candidates won primaries. I mean, nobody picked these people out of a smoke-filled room to run. And so, if people want, like obviously I'm a Bernie supporter, huge Bernie supporter. I already got my Bernie 2020 shirts, and that's basically all I wear now. And
how many shirts do you have, John? Do you have 7 shirts and you just rotate them through?
No, I'm French, so what can I say?
Wait a second. So you're suggesting you just have like 2 or 3 in you, or 2?
Sam, you're the wrong person to be.
I'm not. No, I'm not judging. Don't get me wrong, buddy. I'm not judging. I mean, these.
Sam wants tips.
I want to just know what. I just want to know what the baseline is that I can. Because if you can do it, I can do it.
Okay. Well, I'm not going to talk too much about my cleanliness. I'd rather talk about.
All right. Well, okay. So say. Okay. So your point is you are a Bernie supporter, but what? But go ahead.
An uncleanly Bernie supporter.
My point is that we have to run candidates and win elections. I mean, that's the main thing. And so, when you talk about people in the South, I think that Ms. MaClean made a very good point about people in the South, and it's been a very regressive culture. I mean, you can take it like she was talking about how John Calhoun. This can go back even 200 years before that. They didn't want to pay for education. They don't want to pay for taxes. It's an extremely plutocratic society, and if you look at a lot of the problems in the country, most of them stem from the South, and that goes to the current day. And also, as far as education, they don't want to pay for education to this day, and it's been this way, for 400 years. And so, I think it's just really hard to win in the South. And you can look at, Bernie's results in the South. And I think, obviously, as the candidacy went on, I mean, I think he's much more popular than he was but I mean, still, it's going to be difficult. And it's also going to be difficult for any progressive to win in 2020. And that's why I think it's important that all these Southern primaries don't get front-loaded to the very beginning, because it's going to hurt any progressive candidate. It's going to hurt Warren. It's going to hurt any progressive candidate if the South is put in front.
Becomes the first filter. All right. Well, let me. It's interesting because last night we had a guy on the panel who was from Roanoke, Virginia, and it was interesting. Nobody on the panel. And there was a lot of criticism of the DNC. There was a lot of criticism of Pelosi and Schumer. There was a lot of criticism of Democrats in general in terms of not having any strong platforms or broad sort of, principles. But there was also, complaints from not paying attention to the white working class, to not paying attention to the base of the Democratic Party, African-American women. And there was sort of like a broad consensus that there was no ideological differences in the Democratic Party, no major ones, which I think was also sort of a function of there weren't a lot of young people there necessarily, who I think tend to see more of that. What struck me was that there was a real sense of like, look, we were never going to win the Georgia race. That $25 million could have gone to maybe to South Carolina or to gone to like smaller races. But the problem is that Donald Trump put that Georgia race on the map. And by sort of like engaging in it, and it was as if the Democrats said, we need to, show up Donald Trump. Give me your sense. I mean, do you think there was a strategic mistake in putting that much funds into Ossoff?
No, because I mean, essentially, what made Ossoff a prominent candidate is the polling. I mean, if he wouldn't have polled well, nobody would have cared about him.
Right.
And once the first poll started coming out in February, and they had him doing extremely well, that's what caused everybody's interest to peak. And so, unfortunately, the smaller you go as far as population. I mean, like let's say a congressional candidate, and you can take this all the way down to like a city council level or mayoral level. The harder it is to predict. And so when you're talking about congressional races, it's very rare to have real true polling, by outside information,
right,
by outside companies, because it costs money. And so House races are just extremely hard to predict. And in the end, I think what happened was Ossoff should have ran more on health care and ran more on tying people to Trump. But, he still also needed to have a positive message. I don't know. The one thing about saying he should have just went full bore negative is that Clinton did do that, and she didn't win, and so
it's very hard to know because we don't have the type of data that we usually have, or we have on bigger elections in terms of people coming out of the polls. It's hard to know.
Right.
But all right. Well, appreciate the call, John. Good luck with those shirts.
Right, thank you.
Maybe we can get something together, get you one more shirt or something like that. Calling from a 509 area code. Who's this? Where are you calling from?
Hey, Sam, this is Ronald Reagan.
Ronald Reagan, how are you?
It's the J-Man followed by the R-Man. It's quite a day for the fun half.
This is pretty big. You guys back to back. It's a 2 for Tuesday, we would say in the radio business.
Yep.
Double shot.
I want to talk about
double shot.
Double shot. There you go. Double barrel coming at you.
No, I wouldn't say double barrel.
Okay. Well, that's a segue actually because I wanted to talk about gun control.
Yep.
It's actually kind of an important issue for me, and it's one of the reasons why I appreciate you having Cliff on, because I know he's done a lot of work in this area, and but I just want to talk about how we've sort of become desensitized to the violence. There's sort of incident after incident, and it's hard to feel anything anymore. But I was really disturbed by this congressional baseball shooting. I found the whole thing to be really disturbing, but specifically the news that broke a few days ago that Steve Scalise was released from intensive care and is expected to make a full recovery.
And you find that troubling.
It's bad enough that we lose the election. We can't even carry out a run-of-the-mill assassination anymore. What is left of the left? You know what I mean? It's just really disheartening.
I see what your point is.
Yeah.
It's you're extending the incompetence argument that people are making. Is that right?
He was literally in an open field and he's walking already. It's I don't know. Anyways,
sometimes it's not just a guy. It's not just a good guy with a gun. It can also be a bad guy who's just not very good with a gun.
I gotcha. Hey, I wanted you to know I'm joking. This is a joke.
What?
I actually
What?
don't care for Cliff. I don't actually care for Cliff. Okay. Bye.
All right, Ronald Reagan. Well, thank you. Appreciate that. This will somebody will put that segment on Breitbart.
That'll be good for the show.
Bit of a joke. Look, at the very least, you can say, the good thing you can say about Steve Scalise is that he doesn't have the baggage of a David Duke. He doesn't.
I think
he does not have. He does not have the baggage of a David Duke.
Do you remember a couple years ago we did a segment for Ring of Fire when that story first broke, and I said in a couple of years it's going to be like the reverse. Like at the time they were like, well, this is terrible he said this, but he still needs to get the job. And I said by 2016 it will be, why aren't you comparing yourself to David Duke?
Right.
You have no future in Republican politics. Right. And here we go.
Yep. Epish. Nancy McLean is terrific. I thought you'd love what she's doing in Democracy in Chains. The reason the Koch set doesn't like rent-seeking is because financial power undermines land-owning power. Financial capital tax is material resources, and it's completely reliant on constitutional sovereignty. That's why they go after the Federal Reserve and the banks. That's why the commodities crew in Chicago is interested in that Rana Faror book, Makers and Takers. The beautiful thing about James Buchanan is he is alive to speak on the financial crisis. He was alive, yes. The GOP takeover in Wisconsin would have never happened if the finance wasn't in such disarray in 2011. Koch compared himself to Fred Douglass last week. Well, Douglass is getting much more, like he's getting much bigger these days.
He's doing a lot more
Doing a
work.
lot. These coasties think that a constitutional convention is just a liberal conspiracy theory. We sound in North Carolina, Wisconsin, may sound like a shrieking alarmist, but it's always time that people besides MR Crew who have always been with us started listening to us. Alamo John, the South isn't monolithic. The South Carolina, Virginia slaver ethos doesn't extend to the entire South, but John's general point is right. As long as we still have access to the ballot, more or less, we can win about anywhere, but we need to door knocking and organizing in the workplace. You got to turn down his, just his mic a little bit. That CPW. Great interview. It's so important to shine a light on this ideology because it's incredibly attractive to young people in the midst of their political coming of age. I know from experience, I got wrapped up in the libertarian Randian free market BS in college. It was a long, twisted road full of weird arguments about state rights and the Federal Reserve, but the road for me ended with embracing the left and socialism. Keep in mind when these guys call in, a lot of them are really well-meaning and can be convinced. Glad you're back, Sam. Hope family is okay. Thank you. Rusticus. Referencing yesterday's show, I've heard Kelly defend trust fund kids a couple of times now vociferously. Seems she's defending them as being morally, ethically neutral. She even contrasted them being against other moral failings, namely being a bigot. I have a very hard time understanding how, Kelly, you could view being born into extremely wealthy family as somehow less instructive on one's worldview as being born into a bigoted family. That seems like a pretty big blind spot to me. I know virtually nothing about you, but one has to wonder if you simply share that worldview. Do you want to respond?
I just don't think, I mean, I just know people who grew up with wealth that are bleeding heart liberals. And I, you know, there are plenty of people who, when you say trust fund babies, and this is what Michael and you weren't here yesterday, Sam, but, you know, he included it right before he called someone, it was like a trust fund baby and a xenophobe. And to me, it's just, it's crazy. That's a crazy, it's not the same category. I'm not defending trust fund babies. I mean, of course they can be insulated from the world and turn out to be terrible people. A lot of people can turn out to be terrible people. But if you just attack everyone who is born with wealth, when a lot of them might be on the same side and vote against their own financial interests, then I don't understand why you're doing it, unless you just I think some people just I don't think it's jealousy. I think it's just anger and hatred.
That's a lot. But I think I already explained what I was saying the other day, so it's okay.
All right, Joseph Ballin. Good. I hate to say I told you so, but I told you so about Syria and Russia. U.S. issues statement saying Syria is allegedly preparing another chemical attack. Even though they are winning the war, and last time they allegedly did so, caused an international crisis, and for the U.S. to de facto declare war on Syria. Oh, and new video shows Michael's white helmets are now on... Michael, are these your white helmets? I had no idea. Are now on video caught carrying out beheadings. They are going to stage more false flags until Assad is removed from POW. Why are we in this? Because people like you kept pushing this false Russia story that you admit is fake yourself. So we kept pushing a story that we admit is fake. You have now pushed us into World War III because you hate Trump. Well, Joseph, you're an idiot. I mean, honestly, I'm trying to be nice about this, but...
I think he found out about that through one of my retweets last night, actually, too.
You mischaracterize what we talk about on the show. I don't think it's that nuanced that you can't figure it out. Donald Trump, if Donald Trump leads us into a war in Syria, is because Donald Trump is leading us a war in Syria. The idea that we needed Donald Trump to invade Syria, which has been on the agenda for a long time, is sort of absurd to me. But I also wonder, like, why you would threaten Syria, say, don't use any chemical weapons, and then I guess they're going to stage a false flag. And that's going to make it a more legitimate, I don't know.
It's like a pre-false flag. Is that what it is?
I guess so.
Or it's not going to happen, and they're going to take credit for it later. See, they were about ready to chemical weapon them, and we made that warning, and now nothing happened.
And it was Russia's idea.
I love Sarah Palin. Welcome back, Sam. With this whole healthcare thing, I've come to the conclusion that the Republican Party is the party that believes in providing opportunities for crooks, con men, snake oil salesmen. The other day, I'm reading about Rand Paul's ophthalmologist career. Apparently, he started this alternative accreditation board that he and his wife are on the board of.
Is that really true?
Yes, I do recall that. It's sort of like one of his advisors, Walter Block's whole, like, I've got my judge and you've got your judge.
You're Jewish, right?
The board never
Jewish,
given any
but we have
credibility to
different
dissolve.
judges.
Support for Trump pre- and post-Kennedy speaks for itself. I was reading about how the Republicans tried to discredit the American Bar Association because they thought they wouldn't give Clarence Thomas a favorable rating. Deregulation includes getting rid of any standard setting that gives consumers trust in the free market. Your town is next. Sam, I just read a scary piece in Think Progress saying the most potent media outlet for Trump is TMZ. Its main power is that its viewership activity believes they're watching, reading apolitical news about celebs and trivial bullshit, but Harry Levin is close with Trump and has colluded frequently to make pro-administration content. That's interesting. You know, I'll tell you something. So Thursday night, I'm in Worcester, and I went down to a dinner, which was like a reunion of people I hadn't seen in like 35 years from a camp I went to. And some of these guys are, you know, very liberal. Some who it's so like such a bummer to like a kid when I was like 11. This like 13-year-old what I thought was really cool voted for Trump, and this is what they said to me. And this is fascinating. I wish I could remember the third thing. He said, "Look, I think Trump is horrible. I don't like him personally, but I am happy with what he's done in terms of policy." And I was like, the look you had on your face, Michael, was exactly the look on my face. I was like what? And he goes, well, the bombing of Afghanistan, the deregulation stuff, and there was one more, and I can't remember what it was.
Specifically
CEOs.
the mother of all bombs?
And he goes, CEOs. And I'm like, wait, what? What, the bombing of, you mean of Yemen? No, of Afghanistan. And I was like, the mother of all bombs? And he goes, yeah, I thought that was really important, really sent North Korea a message. And I was like, okay, and what was the other thing? And he goes, deregulation. I think that's been really good for business. And I'm like, what deregulations? What, just generally speaking, like get rid of Dodd-Frank? I'm like, okay. And he said, and he's had more CEOs in the White House than Obama did the entire time. And I was just like...
You thought this kid was cool?
I mean, God knows. Maybe he got hit by a bus over the past 35 years.
He had a reverse regarding Henry.
But I mean, this is the thing to understand. You know, people say like Trump's approval ratings at 40%. Well, that's just like means like I don't approve of him, but that we don't have the type of question where it's like, but I like what's happening with the country, or I like what he's doing anyways. I mean, that I found terrifying. There was a lot of terrifying stuff that happened this week for me. Isha, not everything related to kin.com is conspiracy theory. His case has important implications for the extraterritorial jurisdiction of copyright laws worldwide. I totally agree with that.
Yes.
I do agree with that.
Oh, yeah.
And I think to a large extent, however, this is a perfect case of you know, sort of making it very hard to engage in those type of things when he's doing what he's doing, right? He's got the secret files for whatever reason. Bertold Met. This interview was enervating, to be honest. Serious question, gang. How long until we start focusing primarily on building parallel non-governmental political institutions, a la Soviets or communes in Venezuela or trade unions in the early labor movement? Closest we had were our own shitty reactionary unions in the face of this well-funded long-form coup by the Kochs. Why shouldn't we be trying to build workers' councils instead? Like, let's assume the worst. Let's assume the Dem fuck up just one more time. Totally possible. And one more election puts the baying libertarian werewolves in position to shred the welfare state. Why should we even play on that court anymore? What legitimacy would the Constitution still have in our lives? Why should it have any legitimacy? Why wouldn't we just say, all right, we're nullifying, and if you cross this line, you're in territory controlled by the North Denver Potters Co-op? Like if the Dems can't keep the GOP, well,
oh no!
I mean,
the North
I'll
Denver
tell you,
Potters Co-op.
shit's already nearing 1850 levels in some respects. Well, okay. I mean, here's the problem with your scenario. If you're going to set up checkpoints in certain areas around, let's say, I don't know, New York State or whatnot, you're going to have a lot more people with you, I think, Bertolt. So you may have some waiting to do before the rest of us get there. And I was this guy I was talking to from Roanoke last night. He's like, everybody in my neighborhood where I live in Roanoke, Virginia, they are building shelters right now. They have tons of guns that they bought during Obama, and they are convinced that we are headed to a civil war. And here's the thing. They got the guns already.
And we're the ones like still sending checks to these idiots when their like headquarters get burned down.
No, well,
they're like preparing for the Civil War. And we're just like, you know what? Why don't you take the softball team trophy this time, guys? So sad.
Which Hunts, Michael, if you had your choice, would you elect a Marxist government in the U.S. or would you bring Biggie back to life?
Biggie back to life.
Death camp for kulaks. I've heard some liberals smearing the idea of left-wing authoritarianism recently, both historical and contemporary, and I'd like to clarify some things. Revolution, as per Marx, is inherently authoritarian, and even a proletarian revolt is an exercise of force by one class over another. A proletarian governing class is, however, self-terminating, as the inversion of class structure eliminates the conditions for the existence of the working class. The working class reclaiming what is ours, enforcing a fair distribution of resources with obedience and dissolution of the bourgeois class is an exercise in authority. While I think the modern proletarian lacks both class consciousness and a party in the United States, these things can be rebuilt, and it's instructive to understand that democracy has its limitations for human liberation. I thought that was going to end in a distasteful joke. Big Steve, what did you think of Jimmy Dore's impression of you? Personally, I thought it was pretty spot on. Watch out, Michael. There's a new impressionist in town, and he's real progressive. Looking forward to a gamut of new Jimmy Dore quirky character impressions, including right-wing Julian Assange, Maoist Tim Black, and Native American Elizabeth Warren. Ivana Tinkle. Makes me nuts how people on YouTube are willing to throw the country into the crapper just to stick it to Clinton. If people want to hate Hillary, fine. Just don't be selfish and allow Trump to cause suffering and needless pain to this country. When you support Clinton over Trump in general, doesn't mean you support her entirely. You have the foresight to know what is happening now before the general. Just a bunch of people going on a huge witch hunt. You should just say it, Sam. It gets to Michael. Blue Zet. Sam, glad you're back. Missed you. Nefhart, is there a promo code for Beachbody on demand? No, you just got to call 303030 and, text the word majority. Anthem from Blast. You, Sam, my $100,000. We got to stop the infighting on the left and get more organized. Yo, I totally crushed milk toast ass corporate Democrat Sam Seder to debate. Also, the man who shall not be named is developing a meditation app so he can control his cult followers through their cell phones.
Oh, my God.
Isn't a meditation app antithetical to the core brand proposition of meditation itself? Look, let me tell you something about the YouTube thing. It is... I've become, and I realize this, and it's on a spectrum, but the difference between the slime-based YouTube world and the so-called political-based YouTube world are very, very similar. I mean, I watch my daughter like, hi, guys. She's watching videos where it's just like, hey, guys.
Oh, you mean actual slime?
Slime.
Okay, I thought you used
Slime.
it as an adjective.
No, I'm not saying like slime
Okay.
people.
Hi, guys.
I'm saying it's like,
Progressive
hey,
politics
guys.
here.
Hey, guys. It's, Karen B. Just wanted you to know I am no longer buying from Shiny Slime anymore because they said they were going to put more foam balls into their slime.
Hey,
And in
guys.
fact, they only put 3 of them in there. And so they're bad. And buy them from my friend, Slimy Grimy, who puts multiple foam balls in there because real slime, they're just very corporate and mainstream slime salespeople.
Hey guys, here's an important video on the difference between liberal and progressive. See, we don't like liberals anymore, but we need to align with them. Now, watch how I just crush that milk toast liberal corporate sellout Sam Seder. You know, at a certain point, you got to have some integrity. I'm asking questions about Kim.com.
What's wrong with asking questions?
What's wrong with asking questions? When did conspiracy theories get so boring? I like there used to be good left conspiracy theories. If you read like Counterpunch, like the CIA created AIDS as an example. I like that one.
That was a good one.
And it's
Just
to me,
asking
it's
questions.
more plausible than Seth Rich.
Yep. All right. So Paul Ryan went on to Fox and Friends yesterday and told what appears to be the go-to lie. I've heard Avik Roy tell this lie. He was supposedly one of the intellectual architects of the Senate plan, which makes drastic cuts to Medicaid and will, in fact, kick 4 million people off their employer-based health care. But here is the lie that you're going to hear repeated over and over again, that the reason why so many people lose health care insurance, it's not that they're losing health care insurance. They're opting out of it. They got so much freedom now that they are choosing not to have health insurance because, well, here's Paul Ryan.
Mr. Speaker, while you were in your series of meetings, the CBO came out with a score. You knew it was coming out. And a brief look shows that over the course of a 10-year period, you're going to save $321 billion off the deficit. However, 22 million will be without coverage.
What they're basically saying at the Congressional Budget Office is if you're not going to force people to buy Obamacare, if you're not going to force people to buy something they don't want, then they won't buy it. So it's not that people are getting pushed off a plan, it's that people will choose not to buy something they don't like or want. And that's the difference here. So by repealing the individual and employer mandate, which mandates people buy this health insurance that they can't afford, that don't like, if you don't mandate that they're going to do this, then that many people won't do it.
That's absolutely correct. There's no mandate. They will choose not to buy it. But then you have to ask the other question. Why are they choosing not to buy it? Why? Because they want to spend some of their money on food. And if they buy these products, they won't be able to do that.
That's the beautiful thing about choice.
The type of plans that the Senate bill would subsidize would cover 58% of an average consumer costs. And you're talking about relatively ungenerous plans. So on average, the individual pays 42% of their health care bill through some combination of premiums, deductibles, and co-payments. It is the reason why people decide not to buy it is because they can't afford it. Now, what does that mean, afford health insurance? It means it is so far out of their reach, they can't do it. Most people who will not buy health insurance will be older. Now, these are very unwise old people or people who just won't be able to afford it. But that's the lie that they're going with. When you lose Medicaid, You're not saying, like, I don't want to pay for this anymore. Wait, what? So this is the lie, that it's really just freedom. Like, people are so oppressed by health insurance that they just want to get out from under having health insurance. Not, hey, it's going to be that much more expensive and that much crappier of a product that people won't want to buy it. I mean, it's the same thing. Like, you're saving money. Some of the savings on this also comes from the fact that more people will die and Social Security will save money. So on one hand, the positive thing is that we're going to extend the solvency of the Social Security Trust Fund. The bad side is it's because more people are dying earlier. Hey, you gotta do this.
You win some and you lose. Or actually, for me, it's a win-win. Money and poor people die.
Should we impose capital punishment for people who get parking tickets? Because the benefit is a lot less government services for those people and more parking spaces open.
And then the new revenue could get turned into a tax cut.
22 million people.
Actually, they could build a stadium with the new revenue. I could see Rahm Emanuel proposing something like that in Chicago.
Well,
you
I
park
mean,
in this place, we'll
sold
kill
them.
you, and then we'll build the new Chicago Cubs stadium.
Here is the most enlightened Republicans are the ones who go through some of these problems themselves, right? I mean, you show me a so-called moderate Republican, and I will show you a Republican who's had a son or a daughter or a wife or a husband or a father or a mother or an aunt or an uncle who has gone through the problem that they are now advocating to have government deal with. Here is former Florida Representative David Jolly, Republican, on the last word last night.
Lawrence, I'm going to share something with you and the American people tonight that most people probably don't know. Here's the other patient that David Jolly is. On January 4th, I was a former member of Congress, unemployed with no health insurance and a pre-existing condition. And while I ultimately chose a private sector plan, I also knew in 2017 Obamacare provided an exchange that was a safety net that wasn't there before. And to be honest with you, if I had had to rely on it, I knew it was there. And that's why the politics of Obamacare in 2017 are different than 2013. I lost my doctor and I lost my plan in 2013, and I was angry about Obamacare, and I ran for Congress. But in 2017, as an unemployed person with a pre-existing condition, I knew Obamacare was there as a safety net if my wife and I needed it.
Well, I mean, there you have it. I mean, literally there is... Portman is one of those guys, right? It was with marriage equality.
Marriage equality.
I mean, you see time and time again. This is show me a Republican who supports a government program. I will show you a Republican who realized at one point that someone they knew or themselves needed it.
What's that? What is it? It's the Scrooge or something. Is that it? The Christmas tale? Where he he has a nightmare and he has to go basically have the experience of all of the people
Father
that
Time or something.
But isn't he? But but it's also he's like a factory. He's like an evil factory owner or something, and he has to deal with like the workers that he mistreats and their kids and everything. And then by the end, it's like a morality tale where he has to go personally. I think that's what it is.
Scrooged? You mean
Christmas Tale? Christmas Tale.
You're thinking of the Bill Murray movie.
No, I said
called
Scrooge,
Scrooged.
not his name is Mr. Scrooge in Christmas Tale.
Yeah, the name of the story is A Christmas Tale.
Oh, okay.
But Scrooged is the
Bill
Murray
movie,
version.
the Bill Murray 80s vehicle.
I don't know if it was an 80s vehicle.
I think it was an 80s vehicle, my friend.
I think you might find it was the 90s. All right, Warren.
I'm going to do internet-based research right now.
Classic corporatist giveaway, Michael. So here is Warren Buffett. Now, I don't know. Everybody loves to quote Warren Buffett. You see, like the Warren Buffett, they make up quotes and then send it to email, right? Haven't you gotten that? Haven't you gotten that from your folks, probably, Matt? Right.
Be the change you want to see in the world,
right.
Warren Buffett.
Right. They keep sending you. That's on the right. There's like so many of these. They basically, some conservative writes up something like, "You should pick up yourself by your bootstraps," and then they just say like, Bill Gates or Warren
Bell
Buffett.
Curve was a great book.
Taxation
Warren
is
Buffett.
theft. Martin Luther King.
Taxation is theft. Read the bell curve. It's numbers.
Look, Warren Buffett seems smart, and he was very careful about raising his children so that they didn't have access to his wealth, supposedly. Which
How exactly does that work?
Well, I mean,
I think cattle prods around.
Well,
his
he's
kids.
got a lot of wealth. And so it's just a question of how much of it. But so I'm not 100% sure really why we care what Warren Buffett has to say, but some people do. And we'll take it where we can get it. But with his limited knowledge, this is what his perspective is on healthcare.
Something that affects all businesses is the cost of health care in this country, and you've been vocal about that. You've argued that right now, I mean, in effect, that the cost of paying for health care...
Pause it for 1 second. Now, they seem to be in a furniture store in a mall.
Classic Buffett.
Classic Buffett. Let's move. Let's do this in a mall. I'm checking out my businesses. But I mean, I think, the idea is that from a business perspective, and of course, if we end up getting single payer in this country, we're going to have buy-in from businesses. And we heard this a lot 10 years ago, I feel like, that every car that GM makes, $2,300 of it is healthcare. Here's Buffett explaining from a business perspective why single payer might be a better thing.
Health care can affect a company even more than taxes.
Well, it does. I mean, in terms of our competitiveness in the world, health care in 1960 was 5% of GDP, and there's only 100 cents in the dollar. So it's gone from 5% to 17%, and it keeps going up. Corporate taxes have gone down from 4% to 2%. So corporate taxes are way less of a factor in American competitiveness than I'm talking about overall business, than medical costs.
And as we sit here today in Omaha, the Republicans in Congress are madly trying to figure out what to do to replace Obamacare, the Affordable Care Act. Do you have a firm idea in your mind of what ought to be done about Obamacare? Everybody acknowledges there have been some problems with it.
I think that's way outside of my circle of competence. But I would say this: you can't have that 5 go to 17 and move on to 20 and 22 or 24%, because there are only 100 cents in the dollar, and healthcare is gobbling up well over $3 trillion a year. It's just about the same as the federal budget. I mean, it's getting up there.
Are we now at the point where the country does need to think about some sort of single-payer system in some form or another?
With my limited knowledge, I think that probably is the best system, because it is a system. We are such a rich country. In a sense, we can afford to do it. But in almost every field of American business, it pays to bring down costs. There's an awful lot of people involved in the medical, just the way the ecosystem works, that there's no incentive to bring down costs.
And it sounds like you're saying with a single-payer system, it'd be easier to figure out a way to get those costs down.
It'd be more effective, I think.
There you go. For what it's worth, there's Warren Buffett proposing it. And there are a lot of people who think he's some type of god, I guess investors try and shadow him.
Sage of Omaha.
Oracle, I think
the
they call
Oracle of Omaha.
Oracle, Sage, Yoda, whatever it is.
It reminds me, we talked about Steve Jobs.
I found this out the other day.
Yeah.
So you remember last year, at one point I had to go to the emergency room.
Yes.
Because I thought, I wasn't sure that I was having a heart attack, but my wife was convinced I was having a heart attack. So I went to, one of those walk-in medical places, You know what I mean? One
Were you
stop.
compromised in your mission?
What's that?
Nothing. Go ahead.
And so they charge you like $250, and they say you should go to the emergency room. So I guess they don't get sued. I don't know what they're good for. So I go to the emergency room, and I'm waiting there for 7 hours. I think from like 9 p.m. until 4 in the morning. They take my blood. No. They give me an EKG at like 10 p.m. Then I wait for 5 hours watching, sitting across, one lady in shackles, another guy who was like challenging 7 cops to wrestle him.
That wasn't you?
And eventually I get up and I walk over to like this doctor station. I'm like, hey guys, I'm going to leave because I've been here for 7 hours. It's 4 a.m. I got to do my show tomorrow and I'm just going to go. So the doctor's like, okay, we'll take your blood. Then I wait like another 45 minutes for it to come back. So I get a bill. Guess how much the bill from the hospital is?
At least several $100s. At least.
At least several $100s?
At the
How much?
3,000? Wow.
3,000, I guess.
$1,800. $1,870. Okay? So I've got insurance through AFTRA from voice work I do primarily, and from my union. And eventually I get it paid off, and the co-payments end up being like, I don't know, like $200. That's it. After all that. And it's broken down, like, I don't know, $150 for the lab test, $150 for the EKG, $1,300 or something like that. Maybe there was another $100 or something, and it was like $1,374 for emergency services. So the other day, I get a notice from a collection agency. You owe $550 to, Brooklyn Emergency. I'm like, what the frick is Brooklyn Emergency? And I call them, and they're like, I call the collection service, and I'm like, who? I've never gotten a bill for this. I have no idea what this number represents. Well, it's from Brooklyn Emergency. Okay, well, who are they? Don't know. Well, what do you mean you don't know? Can you give me their phone number so I can call them? Nah, don't have it. Got to check with our client representative. But if you haven't heard anything in 30 days, call back. And I'm like, you're looking for money from me. I'm not going to do your job. You get in touch with me and tell me who it is that's billing me on this. So I look it up. I can't find Brooklyn. If you Google Brooklyn Emergency, it's just like, do you have an emergency? Are you in Brooklyn? And that's it. And so I called the hospital, and it turns out that that's the doctor. The doctor who came over and took my blood, or has told somebody to take my blood, is charging me an extra $500. And so I'm talking to a lady on the phone. I'm like, wait a second. So I see the lab costs. I see the EKG costs, right? The lab costs are the blood. And then I see $1,400 for emergency room services. What services? Well, it's just when you came in. I'm like, so you're telling me that just walking in the door cost me $1,400? Yes. Well, like, at what point did you decide to charge me? Like, if I walked in there now and I walked out, would you charge me $1,400? Like, what? I don't understand. What's this for? What am I paying $1,400 for? And you know what it is? It's because the insurance company will pay it.
Yeah.
And so the problem is that you don't have and because they have some deal and they're negotiating God knows what, how many clients they have, you need a single buyer to say, hey, dude, we're not going to pay $1,400 just to walk through the door.
That does remind me of a Jerky Boys prank, though. Like, boom, then they go through the door, more money.
That's what it was like.
Brooklyn Emergency is the other man that you saw. You said hi, and that's another $600. Do you see?
We talked before, just really quick. Remember in the Steve Jobs biography when they asked him about national education policy, and he, gave some pablum about innovation and teachers being too comfortable. But it was just like the same premise with Buffett. I'm glad he said what he said. But like, when are we going to stop giving platforms for CEOs to pontificate on? Like, no one's asking a nurse how to run a investment portfolio.
I think,
or a teacher how to run Apple.
I think if he's talking about businesses, the burden that businesses.
Yeah, well, that was what he spoke to.
The burden that businesses bear in terms of healthcare costs, and how relative to the tax burden that these corporations have, it's nothing compared to the lack of competitiveness in terms of healthcare.
Right.
Now, that's going to come down because a lot of those corporations are going to go to the state that has gotten the waiver and get their so-called health insurance from there. And there's going to be a race to the bottom on that. I know there's this sense that the healthcare bill is in danger right now of failing. But just remember what happened with the House bill. Everybody thought it was dead. And then like 3 or 4 weeks later, somebody comes up. What they do is they got markers, right? They now know where everybody's problem is. They've flushed everybody out. Who's got a problem? Paul, Mike Lee, Ted Cruz, Ron Johnson on one end. On the other end, it's Capito, maybe, Collins, Portman, Heller. They're going to take that $300 billion in the deficit savings, and they have a $200 million cushion, $200 billion cushion relative to the House. And they're going to go around to each one of them, and they're going to say, how much? What do you need to go back home to sell this, keep you from not getting reelected? What do you need? And I have a feeling that what's going to happen is we're June 27th now. They may punt, but during the time that they're punting, they're going to be instructed no town halls, right? You're going to go on break. You're not going to have any town halls, and you're not going to have to worry about it because everybody's going to think healthcare is dead, just like it did happen with the House. And then they're going to come back, and they're going to do this. They need to do it to do tax cuts. They need to do it. They cannot walk away from this and do nothing. So do not fall. When this happens, when they all sound like it's dead, don't fall for it. Keep hammering. Because understand, Mitch McConnell, he's a snake in turtle's clothing. Calling from a 215 area code. Who's this? Where are you calling from?
Hi, Sam. It's Mindy. How are you?
Mindy, how are you? Oh my gosh, this is like this is like an all-star call-in day.
Well, what I wanted to say to you is that interview you did earlier today, I've been holding on this whole time. That was the absolute most informative interview I've ever heard on any TV show ever.
Oh, well, this is not a TV show, but I appreciate that.
I mean, on any radio podcast, whatever. I mean, that was actually, it like brought it all home for me. Because I've read Atlas Shrugged and I understand Paul Ryan's philosophy and all that, but I still didn't understand the whole thing with like why would they want to hurt people? And it's all about the Koch brothers, because yesterday they were talking about Dean Heller, that the minute he comes out against this, the Koch brothers are just going to put up another opponent against him. And it's like whack-a-mole. Like, if you don't do what I say, next. If you don't do what I say, next. And that's just what they're going to do in order to get their agenda. So there really isn't anything to, like, completely understand other than the Koch brothers' philosophy with the money.
And
it's just all about the money.
And the fact is they have the money to be the enforcers. They have so much
money.
Right,
it's just all about their own. Like Gorsuch, yeah. What did they $10 million to get Gorsuch? What was that to get him elected? Wasn't it? I mean, he is like owned. These guys are bought and paid for. They like have to do what they have to do, or else they're just done.
I think
that was one thing.
Go ahead.
What?
No,
that was just one thing I wanted to say. It like brought it all home for me when you had her on, and I'm going to like go on to Amazon right now and buy her book.
Well, buy it through our link.
Oh, okay. I'll buy it through your link.
Don't get greedy.
I'll definitely buy it through your link. Everybody buy it through the link. It really hit home to me. It brought it all home. I'm going to make everybody I know read it. The second thing I want to ask you is, my husband told me that people in some of these deep red states, they don't get MSNBC on cable.
Yes.
Like, is there some kind of
Is there some kind
of thing where like they don't?
No, this is the other point. This is the other point that the guy from Roanoke said. Is he actually was like, I'd like to start up a AM talk radio network, and I was like, yeah, believe me, tell me about it. But the fact is that there's clearance, and what clearance is how many cable essentially systems are you on? MSNBC is on. I think it's maybe half of the ones that Fox is. Fox has permeated the country so significantly. They just don't have the clearance. MSNBC just does not have the clearance. Part of that, I think, initially was that Fox bought its way on there and eventually ends up getting some type of, I don't know if they get, there's basically three ways it works, right? One is you buy your way on to cable systems initially. The other is you just get on cable systems because and you make your revenue through advertising. But most outlets, what they do is they get on cable systems and they get a fee per person. So maybe 5 or 10 cents per person who has cable in that area. And, you know, you as a consumer, you don't know that you pay that 10 cents. That's part of your bill. But
you also don't know that that there's a station out there.
Yep.
Like if you live in deep Alabama,
Yep.
you don't know if there's a liberal in
Yep.
deep Alabama, whatever, or somebody, they don't know
Yep.
that there's an MSNBC. They don't know there's a Rachel Maddow out there. They don't know that there's a Chris Hayes
they don't know there's a majority
or anything
report.
like that out there. No, they don't know there's a majority report out there. They don't know that. So they're basically conditioned to be ignorant because it's all they know.
I mean, I think
That's,
too. I
you know-
think that the guy from Virginia was making that point last night. He said, "Look, you know, the tough
I didn't
part
hear
is
that.
well, no, because it was just a public, it was just a small event that I went to. But he was making this argument. Professor from down there, he said, "Look, there's two things. One is the Democrats are not very good with providing a message, but more importantly, on some level, is that." The only thing they hear, that folks hear down there, are just they're inundated, they're swimming between AM talk radio and Fox News. You know, they're believing all of the right-wing talking points from Benghazi and whatnot because they're not even hearing, even on Facebook now, they cannot even access a different perspective. And so they hate Democrats. They think Democrats are evil.
They just...
Yep.
They just don't understand. The third thing I wanted to say is I saw Randy Bryce yesterday on TV. Now, he excited me. That was
He's running
exciting.
against Paul Ryan. Yep.
Yeah, I mean, what do you think of him? I mean, I was like completely like glued to the TV. I kept replaying it.
Well, we
it was,
played
like,
his
so
ad.
exciting to me.
We played his ad, I think, like a week ago, and you know, pretty impressive stuff. You know, I think. Listen, all you need is, you know, for me to be happy with that is a good candidate who's going to make Paul Ryan a little bit sweaty, and hopefully beat him.
Right, I loved him. I absolutely loved him, and the final thing I wanted to say in reference to John Ossoff is. I mean, could he get any more vanilla? Like, he was just a guy in a suit. Like, there was no message. His main goal was not to piss anybody off.
Yep.
You can't win on just not pissing anybody. You can't look Republican and think that they're going to vote for you. Like, he just looked like a schmuck standing there with, like,
I know.
no
I think,
message.
listen, I think John from San Antonio has a good point, though. It's like, you know, you can only read so much into these, and he won the primary. He came very close in the primary to winning it all. So I don't know. I think probably his campaign made a mistake in not having a message in those final weeks. But who knows about that district?
May I just, Mindy, any new Kellyanne Conway thoughts before you jump off, please?
No, I'm not going to give you a Kellyanne Conway thought, but can I give you my Twitter name?
Of course.
Okay, because my Twitter name is Mayday Mindy 9. Well, it's Mayday Mindy. Mayday Mindy 9. Yeah, I'm really funny. I've been doing
Number
these
9
lists lately.
Number 9.
It's Mayday Mindy, and it's the number 9 because somebody took Mayday Mindy who doesn't even use her account. But
From
so
1
my
through
name
7,
is Mayday Mindy, but my act
8.
is Mayday Mindy 9.
Okay, Mayday Mindy 9.
Okay, and then the very last thing, and then you can go. is I'm with you, Ronald Reagan. I had the same fucking visceral reaction he did to it. The absolute same. I wished that he didn't. Okay, I'm not going to say any more. I just gave you my Twitter name.
Yeah, see you on Mayday Mindy 9. Mayday Mindy 9.
Yeah, you don't want to give out your...
Mayday Mindy 9, but I had the same reaction Ronald Reagan did about it, and I was really freaking pissed off.
All right. Bye, Mindy. Thanks for the call.
You know what made that call so amazing was the way he did the like. I'm just joking. I actually don't care for Cliff. Jesus, that's classic.
Hard on for Assad. Bashkar Sankara of the failing Jacobin Times references the Victims of Communism Foundation in his NYT piece. Totally a cuck move. Also, that Sam Harris article Brooksy tweeted out was BS. F Sam Harris. But that article sucks. Please apologize to Jimmy Reefercake. Hillary Clinton old set. Kike the Cuck. Glad you're back, Sam. Hope you taught that John Ossoff bastard a lesson he won't forget. Gina Cummings. Not sure if you listened to the show while you were out, but just let you know, Michael was telling everyone that you had to get a rectal retread done because of gerbil claw damage. Guessing Sam's urgent bathroom break was a result of... Okay. Almighty. I agree with Kelly on trust fund gate. Michael's bigotry against trust fund babies is disgusting, almost as bad as Kelly's anti-Semitism. Lone Star of David. I have to say... okay. A square.
Wait, what direction was that going in?
I don't know.
Oh, okay.
Sam, glad to hear things are stable on the home front. A square. With that Mike interview with Corey Friday and this one today feels like crying indeed. The left progressive Dems are so behind organizing an apparatus that's even minimally comparable to what your desk describes. It's daunting. That guess would have been a weekend interview for Hayes to explain to more people what's going on macro and bottom up. Another reason why I pay membership with Glee every month. We'll email you a sponsor to sponsor membership for a year. We need more force multipliers. Mike, thanks for playing that Corbyn speech yesterday. Uplifting. Salvatore. Great interview today, although a historian using the term irreversible change is strange. Sam's de minimis. So now we've pre-certified that any future chemical attack in Syria will be Assad's doing. Ipso facto, it's so obvious we're in for another snow job of an excuse to increase our attacks in Syria. I can't believe this doesn't cast further doubt on the previous claims of near suicidal chemical attacks by Assad up until now. Why would he do it? It makes no sense except as uranium yellow cake mobile weapons of mass destruction kind of bullshit. Look, I think we were quite clear that there's a myriad of reasons why he would do it. There's also reasons why Assad wouldn't have done it. Nevertheless, the point is that we should not be further involved in Syria.
I think Assad definitely did it, and I do not support military action in Syria.
Jimmy Dore's hair dye. Crackly noise. It's just your new haircut. Nick the Liberal. Our Revolution group in Burlington County is attempting to add an arts aspect to our voter engagement strategy. We're producing a comedic YouTube video to point out the Dem establishment tactics used to obstruct change. To that end, it would be awesome if Michael could do a Clinton impersonation for the phrase right down the middle. We could take the clip from your podcast. If you're interested in our script, we can email it.
I will not support anything that involves establishment work. I'm tired of people who play it right down the middle.
Broadly speaking, I don't have a problem with anybody taking any clips of our show to do something. I mean, I wouldn't want you to take the show and then go out and sell it. But any derivative material, have at it.
As an example, if you're a sort of slow YouTuber and you want to play an entire video from our show and do a very bizarre play-by-play of it, have at it.
Have at it, of course. My corporate taskmasters will come and get you. All right, this I enjoyed. So apparently some dude tweets at Sean Hannity, and this is actually great. And now I'm going to be a little bit careful about how I retweet. In fact, I'm quite convinced now there's going to be a lot of people who are going to sort of like try and lull me into
but
a
it will
false.
be like, look at this new CBO score on Medicaid outlays. Sam
Right.
Small D.
Right.
I
So wait a
retweeted.
second. So let me tell you what people happen. So somebody, this guy on Twitter, at Chris Caesar, shoots a tweet to Sean Hannity. Sean, you should drink more! ! And then Sean goes home and apparently he retweets it, quote tweets it, which means that you do a retweet, but then you write on top of it. And it said, I need one, just got home. And then apparently what Chris Caesar did is he changed his handle from whatever it was, maybe it was just Chris Caesar, to Hannity Gargles Piss. And apparently it retroactively changes your retweets, whatever has been retweeted.
Shows the live tweet.
Which is a mistake, it seems to me.
It seems like a bit of an exploit.
That should probably not be the case.
People were doing that to Mike Cernovich, apparently.
That's funny. And so it took Hannity about 6 or 7 hours before he put that down. Now, with all that said, there are some people out there who think that there is some medicinal value to drinking your own urine. So
go for it,
I don't
Sean.
think there is.
It could be true about Sean Hannity. I mean, he is a pretty buff guy.
Neff, sending lots of love and healing energy and prayers to your family, Sammy. Thank you. Ryan Tennant, is it just me or is it a little convenient that Congress is on the precipice of passing insanely popular legislation that will impact the health insurance of tens of millions of Americans, and the White House is saber-rattling about some alleged Syrian chemical weapons activity? I have no doubt that this is about trying to help sinking numbers. There's
He's
no doubt
being
about it.
presidential for Fareed.
So presidential. Julia Capecu. It's weird that Kelly loses her about whenever Michael says trust fund baby, as if she's defending some disadvantaged, marginalized group.
I don't advocate for holding anything against anybody that is just a fact of their life when they're born. I don't understand. I mean, people should certainly be held accountable for their behavior when they start making choices for themselves. And, you know, certainly wealth disparity it hurts many people in this country. But just because someone is born into money, that doesn't do it for me. That's not a reasonable insult for me. And so every time I hear it, it just grates at me. Certainly people that get trust funds, a lot of them turn out to be horrible. I'm not arguing against that, but...
Okay. Let me just finish the thing because this addresses it. But your point is made. Does Kelly...
It's not. No.
Well, your point is made. Your point is that you don't think that people should be held responsible. I think that's a legitimate point. Does Kelly attack all men when discussing sexism? Well, Michael isn't attacking all people with inherited wealth. Get over it. Hug and make up. It's getting old. Love you both. Sam is okay too, I guess.
You know, if
Attorney Andrew,
the power disparity between Michael and I on being able to talk on this show is incomparable. So, you know, if it's
different roles.
Yes, I know. You know, it's.
Am I preventing you from talking about it?
No, I'm not. And I haven't talked about misogyny for over a year on this show. And even at the time, I mean, like, I'm not confronted with misogyny in this office. That's not an issue for me.
I mean, I think your point stands. I mean, your point, I get, I mean, I think you've articulated your point.
With our audience, it's very... I understand why it's unpopular, but like Jesus, like I mean, it's I guess it's just in the same realm as where like I'm not that into jokes about people who got shot, so I guess I'm just not on the same page with certain things. Like I just don't. I don't know. It's harder for me to.
Not everything is going to be for everybody.
It's just so.
Is that what you said to Seth Rich?
I mean, I think like Yes, he's sometimes a horse is beaten a little too much. All right, I gotta wait. What?
What?
Hold on 1 second.
Do you need me to vamp for you?
No.
Okay.
All right, I gotta wrap this up. I guess I gotta pre-record. Attorney Andrew, that interview reminds me of the thing Jody Dean said when she was last on. The left does not know it exists. There's not a full consciousness among the left of its full identity and power. As such, powerful astroturf groups have outsized influence. Also, let's take a moment to acknowledge that this show, led by centrists, John Ossoff lovers, Seth Rich murderers, had Jody freaking Dean on the program, where she argued that the individual is an ontological fiction and disrupt proper class analysis. You are such establishment shills. Finally, can you have on Tim Faust to discuss his latest article on the Jacobin towards single player? I've heard him on Stringer Bell Heroin Town Home, and he's really good. I'm actually interviewing him, I think, in 5 minutes on for the Ring of Fire, but I'm not sure. Also, everyone should read Ryan Cooper's piece on centrism and anti-racism. Will do. All right, I'm going to take, hold on. Let me see what's going on here, because I'm getting IM'd and I was told. All right, well, let's take one more phone call. I got a bunch here. Sorry, there's a lot of people I know have been waiting for a long time on the phone. You call from a 423 area code. Who's this?
Hello, Sam. I'm glad to hear that you're back. How you doing, buddy?
I'm doing good. Who's this?
All right, this is Zach from Tennessee. How
Hey,
you
Zach,
doing, man?
What were you trying to do there?
I was trying to do you.
Okay, I got a little time. I just got an IM. All right, so what's up? Zach, what's up?
Two things. I was scuba diving in Lake Michigan, and I actually found some moon rocks over the weekend. I'm a Patreon guy for you guys.
Thank you, appreciate
it. I was wondering if you caught the Paul Krugman piece in the New York Times about the tax cuts for no reason at all, whereas in the past, at least, they've tried to come up with some BS excuse. Here, it's just like, hey, we're just going to do them. Did you read that article?
I did not, but there is, in this bill, a retroactive capital gains tax cut.
Yes,
In other words, taxes that you paid last year on capital gains, that theoretically, right, and it's like a twice removed argument at this point, that on the stocks that you sold, let's say, or the house that you sold, the idea theoretically between a capital gains tax as to why we treat wealth more favorably than we do work in terms of the tax code is because this is going to generate and not disincentivize people from doing economic activity that supposedly will shower down upon us, like gold, if you will.
There's no
But in
incentive
retrospect,
for future activity.
I can't go back and change my behavior from before. So it's so naked. It's so naked that it's appalling. It's appalling. And the idea that, like, getting capital gains taxes from last year back, clawing it back, is in any way a health care bill is absurd. It's absurd.
Well, at another time when we have just a few more minutes to talk, I would like to talk to you since I've lived my life in the South and worked in Charlotte and Atlanta. I would like to talk to you about the cultural aggrievement and the right-wing fever swamp that has started here and has spread obviously to Wisconsin and the Rust Belt. One last thing, I didn't know if you saw Grover Norquist's Twitter.
Yes.
It was just a jewel. But
This was his.
See you back, Mike.
This was his. He has these stories for Grover Norquist. Supposedly his origin story was that his dad said, here's an ice cream cone. And give me that ice cream cone. And he bit half of it off. And he said, this is what happens when government comes in and taxes. And then Grover Norquist made up
Instead of
his
realizing he had an abusive dad.
Right.
He took that seriously.
And then Grover Norquist tweeted out the other day, my daughter wanted a guitar, and it was $34, and she saved up $34, and we went down to the store, and then sales tax.
Sales tax.
And then apparently, then he just got slammed.
And he
between
didn't have
people
enough money left over from ripping off Native American tribes to pay for the
Well,
sales
but
tax?
then he claims that
Yeah.
he did actually make up the difference.
Oh, good guy.
And
What a dad.
no word as to whether or not he took a road on his way to the guitar shop. No word
Exactly.
as to whether or not there was plumbing in that guitar shop or electricity that was brought to the street. I mean, no word as to any of that, or if there was electricity, that existed in his home to play the electrical guitar. And also, I don't believe the story. but aside from that, you know
Okay,
what?
well,
I told
thank-
my daughter
yeah.
she could have an iPhone, and then it cost $200 with a plan. And I'm like, thanks, corporations. See you later, Zach. Appreciate the call.
Okay, check you later.
Bye. That was the origin story of when my daughter started to rob people of their iPhones.
I was going to say became a socialist, but okay.
No,
More
she went out and started stealing iPhones because you're like, why do I get paid for
reappropriating
this?
wealth.
All right, I'm going to take one more phone call. We've had people who've been hanging on for almost hour and a half more. Sorry, folks. Just got to take this last one. You calling from a 289 area code. Who's this? Where are you calling from? 289. Going once.
Hello?
Hello, who's this?
Yes, hi, yes, this is Adam from Toronto.
Adam, what's on your mind?
Nothing. Excellent interview earlier. Absolutely amazing. And I just wanted to add an extra wrinkle to the whole Ludwig von Mises mess, that this church that people worship at. People don't realize, he was in charge of an economy in Austria, and it sucked. The unemployment rate was 21.6%. A Jarmo shock took over, and within 2 years, using FDR-style Keynesian plans, reduced the unemployment rate from 21.6% to under 4%. I don't understand how people worship these people. It's unbelievable.
Well, I think you're using all of the right verbs, frankly, because it's a religion. It's a religion that very conveniently rewards a lot of its adherents. It's like, being the best hitter in baseball and then saying everything should be exactly like baseball. Just because.
Yeah, it's United States of amnesia, I swear, sometimes.
Well, indeed.
I don't.
I appreciate the call.
Anyway, thank you very much for taking the
Good
call.
point.
I hope your family's doing well.
Thanks. I appreciate
Take care, guys.
Thanks. All right, folks. We're going to take 3 more IMs and then wrap it up. Let's see. I'm going to take I Love Sam Cedar. Oh, A Christmas Carol. Never mind. I'm not going to.
Also, I'm just going to say 1988.
Staten Island Mike? Really? Was it? Jesus Christ, you Hebes. It's A Christmas Carol. A
Wait, what
Muppet
did
Christmas
I say
Carol is the best.
again?
Scrooged. And I said A Christmas Tale.
Oh, you're supposed to be the ultimate Gentile, too.
Yeah, Matt's not Jewish. Are you, Matt?
He's becoming Jewish by
No, I'm not.
osmosis.
Denver Dave. 99% of rich dicks suck because 99% of rich dicks are powerful old white men. So it's a safe bet to suggest that rich dicks and their rich children have interests diametrically opposed to the poor and powerless. Rich and powerful people don't need the masses to defend their virtue. And Winora 2058. Thank you for the Nancy McLean interview. You and some KPFA shows and Democracy Now! The only broadcast for these long interrupted interviews. And yours is the only one consistently with a bit of levity to interrupt the dire nature of it all. Thank you, N. Bonara. Hal Rager. Ronald Reagan speaks truth. Kidding. I'm kidding. Colin Doucet. Can you guys debunk Steven Crowder on healthcare? Michael missed this perfect opportunity to make a Samantha racial joke when Sam talked about going to the downtown women's meeting. I'm disappointed in you as his right-wing Mandela.
It was just too obvious.
That Trump approval rating flaw you pointed out is similar to the ACA disapproval rating. People don't like it, but they don't ask what they don't like about it or what they would rather have. A lot of people who don't like it might dislike it from the left perspective. The Netflix show Marin is on is actually really great. Oh, is it? All right. I'll check it out. Bob Flav. TYT does not want a constitutional convention. They want to pass an amendment using state legislatures instead of going through this corrupt Congress. M. DeWitt 1. During Bill Clinton's administration, Kochs were contributors to the Democratic Leadership Council via Tom Hartman. Yes, that is true.
They helped set it up, I think, in the 80s, though. I don't know if it was during the actual Clinton administration itself.
No, it was when...
they helped set it up in the 80s, right?
Yes, not during the Bill Clinton administration. I think when Bill Clinton...
Clinton was head of it.
I think the Clinton administration he's talking about when Clinton was the head of the DLC.
Oh, and he was the head of the DLC. Okay, got it.
Wooden Computers. New character from Michael. Aggressive, progressive, Dennis Miller. Well, Mike, baby, I voted for the candidate with a new Green Deal. Majority John. I didn't know that some red states didn't carry MSNBC, although I find it disturbing to know some states really don't get many other viewpoints. On the upside, we all have access to the internet. So if they are open-minded and want to hear the perspective of liberals, they only need to do a quick YouTube search. Of course, that's assuming they're willing to listen. Well, yeah, but God knows what they could fall on at that point, too, frankly.
I'm so sick of fucking corporate Democrats.
DMC. Jesus Christ, lads, put down the copies of Das Kapital and the old Social Security reports and read some literature. It's A Christmas Carol by Dickens. Surprised Matt didn't catch that one. By the way, welcome back, Sam. Hope all is well with the family. Thank you. CC. I admit Dems lack an imagination to a certain degree, but if they had the best PR in the world, if you're frozen out of the corporate media and further obstructed by corporate Dems and Dinos, you have a long way to go. Steve Pippinger. It's called A Christmas Carol. Another note, what is it about the conservative mind that precludes it from having empathy for people it's never met? And the final I am of the day. Let's see. See what I have. Christo. Michael made a spot-on characterization the other day of the goals of the GOP-backed elites as preparing to permanently raise the drawbridge on everyone else. I've been very alarmed, particularly since Trump praised Duterte's presidency in Philippines. It seems like there's a movement afoot to enact a slow-motion version of removing every unfortunate person on the margin. Akin to that fear, my son was born with the effects of cerebral palsy, and because we were fortunate enough to be able to devote more time and resources to getting him therapy very early on, he has more than outperformed expectations. Now he's generally not far off pace with most 12-year-olds. That's great. Still, he has the original diagnosis on record, and I feel he'll probably face hurdles in receiving services as an adult due to pre-existing conditions exemptions. I can only imagine the parents of more severely afflicted children. On that note, see you tomorrow.
It might take all the strength I got to get to where I want, but